It was close to 2 a.m. when the phones went quiet. That's the strange thing about the night shift. The calls come in waves. 1 hour you're juggling a domestic disturbance, a drunk driver, and a neighbor dispute all at once. The next, the room feels like a tomb. Just you, the glow of the monitors, and the hum of the air vents. I remember I was leaning back in my chair, letting my eyes wander over the screens. Call logs, GPS pings, dispatch notes. All of it felt duller when nothing was happening. The coffee in my mug had gone cold hours ago. My headset cord curled like a snake across the desk. Then the line lit up. I straightened in my chair, cleared my throat, and hit the button. 911. What's your emergency? For a moment, nothing came through. Just a soft hiss, like wind over a microphone. I checked the call time. 3 seconds. 4, still no voice. Hello, this is 911. Do you need help? Finally, a voice, quiet and strained. Yes. It was an older woman. I could tell by the quiver in her tone, the way she drew out the word. Ma'am, are you in a safe place? I'm in my living room. Her breathing was uneven, like she'd been crying or running. All right, can you tell me your address? 73 Logan Street, she said. Please hurry. I typed it into the system, pulling up the location. Small single-family home, outskirts of town, no previous emergency calls on record. What's happening, ma'am? I think someone's upstairs. Her words came in a whisper, and I could hear her swallow after she said it. Okay, you're saying there's someone in your house right now. I was already signaling the nearest patrol unit. Yes, I can hear him moving. He's in the guest room. Something about the way she said guest room stuck with me. Like it was a specific place she never went. Do you live alone? Yes. The officers were en route, but it would be at least 8 minutes. I needed to keep her talking. Do you have any way to get outside safely? I don't want to move. If I move, he'll hear me. I could hear faint creaks in the background. Not through my office, through her call. Only, they didn't sound like upstairs floorboards in her house. They sounded like my ceiling. It was subtle, too subtle for me to say for sure, but I know the noises in this building. I'd worked enough shifts to memorize them. That groan when the HVAC kicks in. That pop in the drywall above the far corner. And this sounded the same. I shook it off. All right, just stay on the line with me. Are you sure you don't know who it is? I don't have visitors, she said. Her breathing was slow now, but shallow. No one ever comes here. Her voice trembled on the last word, and then I heard it again, another faint noise. But this time it came through my headset and from above my desk, almost in sync. It was like hearing an echo that wasn't delayed. I glanced up at the ceiling tiles, squinting. Empty. Ma'am, do you have pets? I asked. No. A long pause. Just that soft static hiss in my ear. Then she whispered, he's moving again. What do you hear? Breathing. I adjusted the volume on my headset. Sure enough, buried in the static, there was a faint exhale. Not hers. Slower, heavier. It made the hair on my arms rise. I checked her address again on the screen, my fingers tightening on the mouse. Officers are almost there. Can you describe him? I haven't seen him. She paused, like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. But he's standing near the window. The creak in the background matched another faint sound from my own ceiling. I didn't want to acknowledge it. It was late, my mind was tired, and audio artifacts can do weird things. Still, it felt wrong. Do you have a lock on the door to the guest room? I asked. There is no lock. I heard a rustle, like fabric shifting. Then the static deepened, as if someone was covering part of the phone's mic. Ma'am, can you? Shoo, she hissed. I froze. He's looking at me. My stomach nodded. Are you saying he's in the same room as you now? Silence. The static swelled in my ear, and I swore I heard the faintest tap, 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 like fingers drumming on wood. It came from her line, and again, faintly, from above me. I checked the building's camera feed on the corner monitor. Just me in this room. Ma'am, are you safe right now? Her answer came low, like a confession. No. He's smiling. That's when the line distorted, just for a split second, and in that split second, the hiss sounded exactly like it was coming from my own headset mic, feeding back into itself. I felt my pulse hammer. Ma'am, officers are seconds away. I need you to. The line went dead. Not a click, not a hang-up tone. Just gone. The call log marked it as terminated by remote, but the timer kept running for 3 more seconds before the system cleared it. I sat there, staring at the darkened call window. A moment later, the radio crackled. Dispatch, Unit 4 to 12 on scene, 73 Logan. Lights are on inside. No answer at the door. No signs of forced entry. I pressed the button. Copy that, 4 to 12. Can you make entry? A pause. Dispatch, there's no second floor here. You sure you got the right address? I looked at the listing again, single story. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. My throat went dry. Confirming, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. That's the address she gave. They went in, searched. Empty. No sign of the woman. No sign of a break-in. I logged the call, marking it as unfounded. But I couldn't shake the echo of those noises, how they had matched the creaks above my own head. The rest of the night dragged on in silence, but every time the ceiling popped, I caught myself holding my breath. When my shift ended at 6 a.m., I grabbed my bag, shut down my station, and glanced once more at the call records. Her number wasn't there. Not just deleted. It was like the call had never happened. And as I walked out into the gray morning, I could still hear that faint hiss in my ear that I didn't expect to hear her voice again. After that first call, after the house check, after the officers reported back and said the place was empty, I figured it was over. Maybe it was a prank, maybe a wrong number, maybe just a lonely old woman who imagined things in the dark. But 3 nights later, her number lit up my console again. I recognized it immediately, even before my brain registered the digits. Same exchange, same pattern. My thumb hovered over the button for a second longer than it should have. I took a slow breath and answered. 911, what's your emergency? The line crackled, the way it had before, that faint hiss like static soaked in a whisper. And then her voice. He's still in the hall. Her tone was tighter now, like she'd been holding those words in for hours. I felt my stomach sink. Ma'am, is this? Yes. She cut me off like she knew I'd remember. I haven't moved since I called you last time. I blinked at my screen. The date on the last call showed 3 days ago. Ma'am, are you saying? He hasn't moved either, she whispered. He's just standing there, in the hallway, looking at me. Her breathing was sharper now, each inhale too fast, like she was teetering on the edge of panic but trying to keep her voice low. I pulled up her address, hands cold against the keyboard. Same house, same single-story floor plan. And again, no hallway listed. Just a short entry to the bedroom. Ma'am, where exactly is he? Halfway down the hall, by the picture frame. I stared at the floor plan on my screen. There was no hallway, no picture frame. Are you safe where you are? I can't move. Her voice was breaking now, like the strain of staying still had worn her down. If I move, he'll follow me. In the background, I heard a sound I can't fully describe. Not footsteps, not breathing. It was a presence, the kind of silence that feels heavy. I glanced at the clock. The call had been live for less than a minute, but already felt longer. Ma'am, I'm sending officers right now. Can you tell me what he looks like? I don't want to see his face. That line sent a cold ripple down my spine. The hiss in my headset seemed louder now. I turned my chair slightly and noticed something. The building around me felt stiller than usual, like the hum of the vents had dulled. Her breathing picked up, fast and shallow. He's still there, still in the hall. How long has he been there? 3 days. I stopped typing. My eyes went to the call log again. You mean you haven't moved in 3 days? Yes. That answer didn't make sense. Her voice was dry, strained, but steady enough that she didn't sound like she was on the verge of collapse. No dehydration, no confusion. Ma'am, have you eaten? I'm not hungry. I opened my mouth to press further, but her next words froze me. You've been hearing him too. The creak above me, faint but timed with her sentence, made me grip the desk. I think you should. Shoo, she hissed. You'll wake him. I swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how quiet the dispatch floor was. The other station sat empty, my co-workers on break. Just me, her voice, and whatever that heavy silence was in the background. Ma'am, can you see him right now? Yes. Is he moving? No. Her breathing was ragged now, like every word cost her something. Time stretched. I don't know if it was my imagination or something else, but but the seconds felt too long between each of my breaths. I found myself glancing at the wall clock, half expecting it to be stuck. I kept my voice low. "Where are the officers now?" She let out a soft, humorless laugh. "You can send them, but they won't find me. Or him." The static surged again, filling my ear like a wave of white noise. In it, I thought I heard something else, not quite words, but the cadence of someone speaking far away. Her voice returned, softer than before. "He knows I called you again." A dull creak came from above my head. Not from her line. From here. "Ma'am, I need you to tell me exactly what." "You shouldn't look up," she interrupted. I froze, my gaze fixed on the desk. The static seemed to crawl into the room itself, like it wasn't just in my headset anymore. I could almost feel it in the air. "He's closer now," she said, her voice trembling. I dared a glance at the wall clock again. The minute hand hadn't moved. "Ma'am," I hesitated. "Are you sure this is happening right now?" Another pause. "For you, it's just starting." I wanted to hang up. My thumb even hovered over the button. But something kept me there. Maybe curiosity, maybe the fear of what would happen if I ended the call first. Her breathing quickened to short, frantic bursts. "He's still in the hall. Still, still, still." With each repetition, her tone frayed, like a thread being pulled apart. I could hear it now, footsteps in her background. One step, pause. One step, pause. And above me, something faintly matching the rhythm. I pressed the button to check with the responding unit, but there was no answer. The radio just hissed, identical to the noise in my headset. When I went back to her line, she was whispering so quietly I could barely make it out. "He's right outside the door." The words hit me in a way I can't explain. Because for a split second, I didn't picture her door. I picture mine. The glass door at the far end of the dispatch room, just out of my sight line. I told myself not to look. "Ma'am, I need you to." The line went silent. Not disconnected, just muted. Then, after what felt like an hour, she spoke again, almost lovingly. "He's patient." That's when the footsteps stopped, both in her background and in the ceiling above me. I sat there, listening, until the call timer hit 18 minutes. Then, without warning, the line cut. No intone, no closure. The log recorded it as caller terminated. When I checked the number again, it was gone. I stared at the empty field where it should have been and realized my coffee mug was shaking in my hand. I didn't remember picking it up. The rest of the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that if I turned toward the door, someone would be standing there. Still, watching that, I didn't want to take her call again. After that last night, after her whisper about him being still in the hall, and the clock in my own office refusing to move for what felt like minutes, I swore I'd hand it off to whoever was sitting next to me if she ever came through again. But the thing about dispatch is you don't get to choose. The board lights up, you answer. It was 5 nights later when her voice came back. No greeting, no pause, just a shaky whisper. "He's upstairs now." My skin prickled. I pulled up her address before I even spoke. Same one, 73, Logan Street. I swallowed. "Ma'am, you're telling me someone's in your house right now." Her breath wavered, like she was holding herself perfectly still. "He's walking around." Above me, I tried to keep my tone level. "You live in a 1-story house, remember?" A long silence. Then, "Not tonight." It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them. As if the house had changed, and she was just accepting it. I typed out the details for dispatch, but my hands were trembling. The closest patrol unit was 8 minutes out. Again, "Ma'am, I need you to get somewhere safe. Can you step outside?" "No," she breathed. "If I leave, he'll come down." And then I heard it. A slow, deliberate creak. Not the kind you get from pipes or settling wood. The kind that comes from weight shifting on an old floorboard. It bled through her line, faint but steady. My stomach twisted. The sound was too familiar. I worked in that call center long enough to know the noises in the ceiling above my own desk. The narrow crawl space up there can't hold more than a repair tech, but when someone moves in it, the building feels it. And what I was hearing through her call sounded exactly like that. "Where's he now?" I asked. "He's standing near the top of the stairs." I didn't respond right away. Her house didn't have stairs. "Ma'am," I said slowly, "how do you know there are stairs?" She whispered, "Because I hear them now. They weren't there before." In the background, a muffled thump. Not loud, but enough to feel intentional. "All right," I said, trying to steady my breathing. "Officers are on their way. Just stay with me." "I am with you," she murmured. "Closer than you think." Something in her tone made my fingers go cold on the keyboard. The footsteps started again. Slow dragging. Not toward her. Just pacing back and forth above her head. I could feel my pulse in my ears. And then, almost like an echo, I heard the faintest groan in the ceiling above me. I didn't want to look up. The sound cut off when the radio clicked in my other ear. "Dispatch, Unit 4 to 12 on scene." "Copy," I said, relief flooding my voice. "Advise when you have contact." The pause on the other end stretched just a beat too long. "Dispatch, this is a single-story structure. No second floor." My fingers clenched. "Understood." She says someone is upstairs. Another pause. "Upstairs where?" She says she can hear him moving above her. I heard the officer exhale through his nose, the kind of sound you make when you're trying not to spook someone. "We'll check." I could still hear her breathing in my headset. "Shallow. Quick. They're at your house now," I told her. "They're coming inside." "No," she said flatly. "They're at your house." I almost asked her what she meant, but then I heard it. The front door to the dispatch building creaking open. The patrol officers' voices kept coming through the radio, talking about sweeping her place, but I swear I heard the latch click from less than 50 feet away. I gripped the desk. "Ma'am, do you see him now?" "I can hear him on the stairs," she whispered. The officers' voices in my other ear didn't match. They were saying, "No visual," moving to the back, while she said, "He's halfway down." Her breathing sharpened, panicked now. "He's almost here." My mind split, part of me listening to the radio feed, the other to her line. And then, I heard the footsteps again. Heavy. Closer. Above me, the crawl space creaked. The officer's voice cut in. "Dispatch, we've cleared the property. Negative contact. No forced entry." "Copy that," I said, though it came out shaky. Her whisper slid into my other ear like a knife. "They never find him." I wanted to ask why, but I couldn't make my mouth work. The officers signed off, said they'd patrol the area, and I was left alone with her. The footsteps stopped. Then the static thickened in my headset, almost like breathing through wool. "Do you want to see the stairs?" she asked. "No," I said too quickly. "You will," she replied. The line went dead. Just like the last times, the call log erased itself within seconds. The number was gone. The record was gone. It was as if she'd never spoken to me. But the worst part wasn't the call vanishing. It was the faint creak I heard when I finally stood up to leave from the far end of the room, where the ceiling met the wall. The same slow shift of weight you hear when someone is trying not to be noticed. And in that moment, I realized I'd started to believe her. I don't remember when I started hearing her again. It wasn't right away. After that night, the call with the woman who swore there was a man in her hallway, the one with the upstairs that wasn't there, I thought it was over. I thought I could just put it away. File it in that mental drawer where you shove all the things you can't make sense of. The police never found anyone in the house. They never found any sign that someone had broken in. And yet, the audio from the call still had those sounds. The steps, the breathing, the slow drag of weight across the floor that wasn't supposed to exist. They told me the woman died 2 weeks later. Not from whatever happened that night. Not officially. Heart failure, they said. Quiet. Peaceful. She just didn't wake up. That's what they told me. I didn't believe it. I kept working. Nights at dispatch were always long, and you don't get to keep your sanity if you let every strange call crawl under your skin. You tell yourself it's just people's fear, or bad reception, or a misunderstanding. But then, 3 months later, her voice came back. It was a Tuesday, slow shift, middle of winter. I was half asleep in my chair when the line lit up. I picked it up the same way I always do. Clear voice, professional tone, and a woman's whisper slid right through the headset. "He's still in the hall." I froze. Every muscle in my body knew that voice before my brain caught up. My stomach turned ice cold, my skin prickling under my shirt. I didn't answer at first, just listened. I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow, but soft, like she was trying not to be heard. And then the sound of a floorboard bending. Not snapping, not creaking, just that deep, heavy bend of wood underweight. It was her. It was the same night. But it couldn't be. I said her name. Nothing. I told her this was emergency services, that I was here to help. She didn't respond to me. She wasn't really talking to me at all. It was like I was listening in on something that had already happened. Like she was trapped in it. I listened for maybe a minute before the line went dead. No click. No goodbye. Just silence. I sat there with my headset still pressed to my ear, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my teeth. It had been 3 months. She'd been buried. I'd seen the obituary. And now she was back. I didn't tell anyone. What was I supposed to say? That I got a call from a dead woman? That the exact same thing was happening all over again? I just marked the log as dropped line and tried to shake it off. But it didn't stop. The next time was a week later. Different caller ID. Different county entirely. I answered, and there it was again. Her breathless whisper, almost the same words. He's still in the hall. Sometimes there were tiny differences. Sometimes she'd say he hasn't moved, or he's just standing there. But it was always her voice, always that same fear, that same slow, tense breathing. And always, in the background, the sound of someone walking. The thing that really got me was the pacing. The steps were never rushed. They were slow, almost thoughtful, like whoever it was knew she couldn't go anywhere. And sometimes, between those steps, there'd be this long, dragging sound. Something heavy being pulled, or maybe something heavy being dragged along the wall. Every time I heard it, I pictured the upstairs hallway from her house. Except, her house didn't have an upstairs. It got worse when I realized it wasn't just her. Sometimes I'd be on a completely different call, someone reporting a car accident or a medical emergency, and under their voice, faint but there, I'd hear her breathing. Not just similar breathing, the exact same rhythm, the exact same tiny catch in the inhale, like she was holding it in her throat. The first time that happened, my whole body went still. My caller was talking about a diabetic collapse, and I was trying to keep them calm, but in my other ear, I could hear her whispering something. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for the other caller either. It was like she didn't even know we were there. And the longer I listened, the more I started hearing him, too. That slow step, that dragging sound, and once a voice. It wasn't loud, wasn't even clear, just a low murmur deep in the static. Too deep to be hers, too heavy, like a voice that didn't belong to anyone who needed to breathe. I didn't sleep much after that. I started keeping a notebook under the console. Every time I heard her, I'd write down the time, the date, the line, and exactly what she said. I stopped marking them as calls. The supervisors wouldn't understand. They'd just think I was burned out or going paranoid. But in my head, the notes weren't just a record. They were a countdown, because she was getting closer. At first, her voice was muffled, far away, almost like it was coming through a wall. But the last time, she was right there. It was last month, dead of night. The floor around the dispatch desk was cold enough that my shoes felt wet. The building was quiet, too quiet, no background chatter, no keyboards, nothing. Then the line blinked. No caller ID this time. I answered. Her breathing filled my ear instantly. Closer, sharper, like she was inches from a mic. And then she whispered, "Don't look." I didn't say a word. I didn't even breathe. Because in that exact moment, I heard the other line in the building ring. And then the one after that. One by one, every phone lit up, even the dead ones that aren't connected to anything anymore. I sat there with her in my ear, those dead lines ringing around me, and the slow sound of footsteps coming closer. One step, then another, and another. And I swear, they weren't in her house anymore. They were here. The sound grew clearer, like it was moving through our hallway, the one that runs between the bullpen and the server room. I could picture it without wanting to. Long, pale corridor, flicker of the exit sign, and that figure at the end, just barely moving in the dark. Her voice broke through again, and it wasn't a whisper this time. He's not in the hall anymore. Then, click. Silence. The phone stopped ringing all at once. The only sound left was the hum of the server fans and my own breathing, ragged in my headset. I wanted to get up, to go check the hallway, to prove to myself it was empty. But I didn't. I couldn't. I just sat there, staring at the deadline. I've been doing this job long enough to know that not everything has an explanation. Some calls don't get traced. Some callers can't be found. Some shouldn't be found. But she's not gone. I know that now. And I think, the more I hear her, the closer he gets that I was 2 weeks into the job when I got my first silent call. People think 911 is all screaming voices, frantic details, panic pouring through the line. It's not. Half the time it's misdials. Kids playing with phones. A couple of pocket dials from someone's jeans. You learn to tune it out, to listen for what matters. But this one was different. The clock on my console read 2:13 a.m. The night was dead quiet. Just me, the low hum of the monitors, and the faint static hiss in my headset. Then the tone hit. A call coming in. I hit the button. 911. What's your emergency? Nothing. Just air. Not even breathing. Hello. Still nothing. I glanced at the caller ID, a local number, but not one I recognized. I waited, listening, thinking maybe they were scared or hiding. Sometimes people don't speak because someone's in the room with them. I said the script we're trained to say. If you can't talk, stay on the line. Press any number on your phone twice if you need police. Nothing. I should have hung up sooner, but something in the silence felt intentional. Not like a deadline. Not like a drop call. It was steady, alive in a way. I watched the timer tick on the screen. 0:45 seconds. 0:52. I started to notice my own heartbeat in my ears. I asked again, do you need help? No answer. When the counter hit 124, the line just clicked off. No fade. No beep. Just gone. It was weird enough that I logged it in the report as suspicious, open line. That was it. Or at least, that should have been it. 2 days later, I was on shift with Carly. She's one of those veteran dispatchers who's seen everything and has that I know more than you smirk. We were running through some training when she glanced at my report. You got a 124? She asked, casual, like she was talking about the weather. I frowned. What? She tapped the log. 1 minute, 24 seconds. That's what the call lasted, right? Yeah. What? She didn't answer at first. Just leaned back in her chair and chewed her gum, staring past me like she was thinking about something old. Finally, she said, that's the exact length of the drowning. I stared at her. What drowning? Carly gave me that look. You didn't hear about this? Look, 4 years ago, little boy fell through the ice at Clearwater Pond. His friend called 911, but the line stayed open the whole time the medics tried to get him out. 1 minute, 24 seconds, then he was gone. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there, the words sinking in. Carly shrugged it off like it was nothing. Sometimes people hang on to old numbers. Maybe it was a prank, but it didn't feel like a prank. That night, I replayed the call in my head. The weight of that silence. The precision of it. It didn't feel random. It felt measured. A week passed. I almost forgot about it. Then another call came in. 1:37 a.m. A number I didn't recognize. I answered. 911. What's your emergency? Silence. Not empty silence. This one had texture. Like faint static, but warmer. Almost like the line was pressing back against my ear. I tried again. Do you need help? Can you speak? No sound. No clicks. Nothing. I glanced at the timer. 0:45. My stomach tightened. I knew before it happened. The timer hit 124. The call ended. Same length. Down to the second. I started asking questions around the station. I didn't tell them I'd gotten 2 of the same calls. Just asked if anyone had gotten open lines like that. Most just shrugged. A couple of rookies said yeah, sometimes. But Carly, she gave me this tight little smile. Once in a while. Usually the new guys get him. Why the new guys? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Just popped her gum and looked back at her screens. That night, I couldn't sleep. My apartment felt too still. I kept thinking about the boy in the pond, the friend holding the phone, water freezing his fingers while someone screamed in the distance. The way the call cut off. The way mine had cut off. 2 nights later, I decided I'd try something different if it happened again. And it did. 12:58 a.m. The ring in my headset. Unknown number. 911. What's your emergency? Nothing. This time, I stayed quiet too. Just listening. At first, there was nothing but the faint static hum. Then, I swear I heard it, a splash. Very faint, very far away. I leaned in, holding my breath. There was again a splash, and then something like a high, thin sound. Could have been a bird. Could have been crying. Timer. 0:57. My pulse was hammering. I typed on my console, tracing the number, but it came up unregistered. No address. 1:20. I gripped the mic and said, "I can hear you. If you need help, I..." Click. Line dead. I sat there staring at the timer, the empty call log, the way it all reset like it had never happened. After that, I stopped telling anyone at work. Not because I didn't want answers, but because I was starting to think there weren't any. Every few nights, the calls kept coming. Always late. Always silent except for those faint, faraway sounds. And always 1 minute, 24 seconds. It got to the point where I'd feel my stomach knot as soon as the ring came in from an unknown number. Sometimes I thought I heard voices under the static, but not clear enough to understand. Sometimes it was just water. The worst was when I started to feel like I knew what part of the call I was in, just by the sounds. 30 seconds in, that soft, lapping ripple. 50 seconds, that high, thin sound. 1 minute, the muffled shouting, so far away you can't tell if it's words or just the noise someone makes when they realize they're losing. By the 70-second mark, I'd be gripping my headset, almost saying something, and then silence. Click. A month after the first one, I finally broke. I stayed after my shift and looked up the drowning. His name was Michael, 7 years old. The article said the friend tried to pull him up, but the ice kept breaking. By the time the medics got there, the water had gone still. I found the 9/11 recording in the archives. The dispatcher at the time sounded calm, professional, but under it, you could hear it. The splashing, the crying, the muffled shouts. I sat there in the dark room, headset pressed to my ear, and counted. 1 minute, 24 seconds. Exactly. The next night, when the call came in, I didn't even speak. I just listened. And this time, somewhere between the splashing and the crying, I heard something else. A voice. Not a child's. Not the friend's. Not the medic's. It was low, close, right in my ear. It said, "You're next." The line clicked off. I went home and didn't sleep at all. Every creak in the walls sounded like water under ice. Every breath I took felt like I was stealing it from someone else's lungs. The next day, Carly asked if I was okay. Said I looked pale. I told her I was fine, but I'm not, because the calls are still coming. And last night, the timer didn't stop at 1:24. It kept going. 1:25, 1:26, and somewhere in the background, I swear I heard the ice crack that I couldn't stop thinking about that first call. 1 minute and 24 seconds. No words. No breathing. Just nothing. When you work in dispatch, silence is usually a bad sign. It means the caller can't speak. Maybe they're hiding. Maybe they're hurt. Maybe they're already dead. But this wasn't that kind of silence. It felt intentional. I told myself I'd let it go, but the next night when my shift was slow, I found myself in the back office, digging. There's a room we call the archive. It's not glamorous. Just rows of metal shelves lined with thick binders and cardboard boxes, each one stuffed with call logs going back decades. Most people avoid it. It smells like dust and toner, and the light in there buzzes in a way that makes your skull feel like it's vibrating. I told my supervisor I was familiarizing myself with the old system. That's technically true. I just didn't tell her what I was looking for. I found a log from the night before, call Idaho, timestamp duration. 1 minute and 24 seconds. I ran it twice just to make sure I wasn't reading it wrong. Then, on a hunch, I started flipping back through the older binders. At first, it was random, pulling dates, scanning durations. Nothing. But then I hit March 18th, 2017. A drowning at Clearwater Pond. Teenage boy. Fell through the ice. The call had come from his friend's cell phone. The friend had been screaming into the line while the boy thrashed in the freezing water. The log said the call lasted exactly 1 minute and 24 seconds, cutting off when the screaming stopped. I just stared at the page for a long time. I told myself it was coincidence. That's what my brain wanted to believe. But the hairs on my arms said otherwise. I kept digging. At first, it felt like chasing smoke. Most calls don't match that exact duration. But then I found another. June 2nd, 2012. House fire on Mill Street. Woman trapped in an upstairs bedroom. The call started with her whispering that she couldn't breathe, then devolved into panic coughing, and then silence. The flames got her before the crews arrived. Call length, 137. That number stuck in my head. I didn't think much of it until 4 nights later when it happened again. The phones had been quiet all evening. Then, at 2:16 a.m., one line lit up. I answered in my usual voice, steady, professional. 911. What's your emergency? Nothing. I listened. No voices, no background noise, not even static. Just that hollow, empty silence that makes you feel like the line isn't dead, it's listening. I kept my eyes on the clock. Seconds dragged. My pulse started sinking with the little red numbers. When the call finally disconnected, I glanced at the screen. 1 minute, 37 seconds. That was the first time I felt real fear. I didn't say anything to the others on shift. How could I? I was the rookie, the new kid. Nobody likes the rookie who starts talking about ghosts in the phone lines. But that night, I went straight back to the archive. I didn't even take my coat off. I found a Mill Street fire log in less than a minute. 1:37, same as the call I'd just taken. It wasn't just coincidence anymore. Something was replaying these calls. I thought maybe it was some kind of technical glitch, like maybe old audio was bleeding into the system. So I went to our IT guy, Rick. I didn't tell him the whole story, just that I'd been getting a few blank calls with weirdly specific durations. He laughed like I was making it up. You're in dispatch long enough, you get all kinds of garbage calls. Pocket dials, drunk kids, prank stuff. Some people just sit on the line cause they're scared to talk. I asked if old calls could somehow get stuck in the system and replay. He shook his head. Nope, not how it works. Once a call's ended, it's gone. He said it with that smug finality that made it clear the conversation was over. But it wasn't over for me. I started keeping my own log. Every call that came in, I wrote down the timestamp and the duration, just for myself. Most were normal. But every now and then, one would come in dead silent and the numbers would match something from the archive. Like the one at 3:08 a.m. last Tuesday. 2 minutes, 11 seconds. Archive match. 2019, carbon monoxide poisoning. Man passed out before he could say where he was. Crews found him too late. Duration, 2:11. It was like the dead were calling back. The thing that kept me up at night wasn't just why this was happening. It was how the system knew. The calls didn't come in on anniversaries. They didn't match weather conditions or shift changes. It was random, unpredictable. Like the line between here and there was wearing thin, and sometimes something got through. One night, I made the mistake of listening harder. It was 1:44 a.m. when the line lit up. The voice in my head said, "Don't pick up." But muscle memory kicked in. 911. What's your emergency? Silence. The seconds ticked by. At 0:47, I thought I heard something. Not breathing. Not words. It was more like movement. Like someone shifting their weight in a chair or fabric brushing against a microphone. I leaned closer to the receiver. My own breath sounded too loud. And then faint. So faint I thought I imagined it. A voice. It wasn't speaking to me. It was speaking through me. I couldn't make out the words. But my skin went cold in a way that told me. Whatever they were saying, it wasn't meant for the living. The call ended at exactly 2:11. I checked the archive. Carbon monoxide poisoning. Same as before. But this time, the log had a note in the margin. Caller may have been unconscious during final 30 seconds. Unclear background noise recorded. That's when I realized. Maybe I wasn't just hearing them. Maybe they'd been hearing me. I don't know how much longer I can keep this to myself. Every time the phone rings now, my heart stutters. Not because I'm scared of what I'll hear, but because I'm scared of what will happen if I answer. And it's my own death the call is timing that I didn't want to open the voicemail. But it was sitting there on my console, waiting for me. The display just read. Unknown number, 152. 1 minute, 52 seconds. I stared at it for a while, feeling that same cold weight I'd felt the first time with a minute 24. My gut was already telling me this was going to be another one of those calls. The ones that don't make sense. The ones that sit on your skin like a bad dream you can't fully wake up from. I hit play. At first, I thought it was the same nothing I'd been hearing on the others, just faint static, the hiss of an empty line. But there was something underneath it, so soft I almost missed it. A low, muffled sound. I leaned forward, pressing my headset tighter against my ear. It wasn't static. It was movement, shuffling, the creak of something wooden. And then, faint voices. I froze. Not words I could make out, just shapes of them. Like someone talking far away, their sentences eaten by wind or walls. I scrubbed back a few seconds and played it again. That's when I heard it. The first scream. It wasn't sharp or sudden. It was buried, warped by the distance, but it was there. And once I'd heard it, I couldn't unhear it. A woman's scream. Short. Cut off. My stomach went tight. I let it play. My ears strained for every tiny sound. The deeper I listened, the worse it got. I could hear things now that I didn't notice the first time. The heavy thump of running. The slam of something metallic. The roar. Not huge, but building, like wind pushing through a tunnel. But it wasn't wind. It was fire. I've heard enough emergency calls to know it. That hungry, low rush that eats up the background, swallowing everything in it. I looked at the clock. 40 seconds in. The fire was growing. The voices had gotten louder. I could hear coughs, the scrape of something being dragged, more running. And then, a man's voice shouting. Too far away to make out the words, but the panic was there, raw and cracking. I glanced toward the far desk. Officer Myers was still on his computer, tapping away like nothing was wrong. No one else seemed to hear what I was hearing. I rewound it again, closed my eyes, and just listened. It was a house. I could picture it without even trying. Wood floors, maybe older construction, that specific kind of echo in the shouts. Something being knocked over, glass breaking, a door slamming, followed by a scream that went on longer than the first one. My pulse was climbing. By the 1-minute mark, the fire was roaring. I could hear beams creaking. Something heavy fell. A ceiling beam? Furniture? I didn't know. And then, a voice. Clearer now. It wasn't panicked this time. It was almost calling. Low. Direct. A man's voice saying something like, "This way," before being drowned out in another crack of wood and roar of flames. I realized I was holding my breath. The call went on like that. Chaos and heat and voices swallowed by it all. Until exactly 1:52. And then silence. Not a click. Not a disconnect. Just nothing. The same nothing as the others. I sat there, my headset still pressed to my ear, waiting for, I don't know what. A punchline? A glitch explanation? Something that made this all less wrong. But it didn't come. Instead, that it started up in my brain again. The one that told me I'd heard something important, something I needed to understand. So I pulled the archives again. I searched 1:52. No matches. Not for fires. Not for deaths. Nothing in the last 30 years that matched that exact length of an incident. That was when I remembered something. The other 2 calls had matched the length of past tragedies. What if this one hadn't happened yet? The thought sat in my stomach like ice. I shook my head, trying to push it away. That's not how the world works. I'm not psychic. Phones aren't psychic. But the audio was still there. It was real. Too real to be anything but an actual event. And what scared me most wasn't the screams. Or even the fire. It was the man's voice. Because the second time I played it back, the voice didn't sound like a stranger anymore. It sounded like someone I knew. It sounded like my neighbor, Bill. Bill lives in the old yellow 2-story on Pine Ridge, just 2 houses down from mine. He's in his 50s, always outside, tending his yard, always waving when I drive by. I sat there, replaying the clip again and again, convincing myself I was imagining it. That it was just some coincidence, a trick of bad audio. But the more I listened, the more certain I became. It was Bill, and now I couldn't stop seeing it. His house, with its creaky wooden floors, old wiring, and piles of newspapers in the hallway. The kind of place that would burn fast. I checked the time. Almost midnight. I should have gone home. I should have shut the whole thing out and told myself it was just an archive glitch, or a prank, or a ghost story in the making. But I didn't. I went home and parked across from his house. The lights were out, except for one upstairs window. I sat there in the dark, gripping my steering wheel, every detail of that call looping in my head. The fire's roar, the scream, the man's voice calling this way. waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. Not that night. Not the next. And yet, every time I passed his house after that, I'd picture it burning. I'd smell the smoke that wasn't there. And worse, I'd start hearing the faint hiss of the call again, even when my headset was off, like it was still playing somewhere, waiting for its moment to be real. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I know it will, because every other call I got already had. And this one, it's just waiting its turn. It was the kind of night where the building felt like it was holding its breath. Quiet. Too quiet. I was on the late shift, alone at the dispatch desk, the only light coming from my monitors. The rest of the room was just shadows and the faint hum of the air conditioner. It wasn't unusual. Night shifts were mostly stillness, the occasional drunk call, or some noise complaint from a neighbor who couldn't sleep. I'd been staring at the same set of reports for so long that the words had started to blur. I was reaching for my coffee when the call came in. Line 2. No caller ID. When I picked it up, I expected the usual. A quick burst of noise, a voice yelling over music, maybe silence before a hang-up. Instead, there was breathing. Slow, steady, close. Not the kind of breathing you do when you're calm, though. This was the kind you do when you're trying not to be heard. 911. What's your emergency? I said, keeping my voice even. The breathing didn't stop. If anything, it got quieter, like the caller had pulled the phone away from their mouth. But I could still hear it. Hello? Can you tell me your location? Finally, a whisper. She's above me. It was so faint I almost missed it. I turned the volume up on my headset. I'm sorry. Say that again? She's above me. Crawling. I can hear her breathing through the ceiling. I sat back in my chair, the words crawling into my head and sitting there. Is someone in your house? The man, it was a man's voice, but thin, shaky, let out a slow breath. No, not my house. I don't know where I am. I frowned, glancing at the screen. No GPS ping. No number to trace. Just unknown caller flashing in the corner. All right, let's start from the beginning. Can you describe your surroundings? There was a pause. I could hear him moving the phone, maybe looking around. His voice came back, barely audible. It's dark. I can't see much. There's a bed, and the ceiling is low. I can hear her. She's moving slow, like she's taking her time. The way he said it, almost reverent, almost terrified, made my skin prickle. Do you know how you got there? I asked. I was walking. Then, I don't remember. I woke up here. His voice cracked. I can hear her nails. I swallowed. Nails. Dragging. Scratching. Right above me. She stops sometimes. I think she's listening to me breathe. I looked at the clock. It was 2:14 a.m. The building was still silent. My instinct told me to stall, keep him talking until I could find a way to trace him. Okay, I said slowly. Are there any windows? Doors? No windows. Just a door. But it's locked. Locked from the outside? Yes. I tried it when I woke up. It didn't move. And this person, the one above you, can you see her? No. But his voice trailed off into a shaky inhale. I know she's looking at me. A long pause hung between us. What do you mean? I asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. I heard the faint creak of wood, like someone shifting their weight on old floorboards. His breathing hitched. She moved closer, he whispered. Right above me now. I can hear it, her breathing's faster. I muted my mic for a second and called over to the night supervisor station, but it was empty, of course. We didn't always have more than one dispatcher on at night. I unmuted. Okay, I need you to stay calm. I'm going to try to get someone to you. Can you tell me your name? He hesitated. Daniel. All right, Daniel. Can you tell me what town you're in? I don't know. I told you. I was walking and then his words cut off. What is it? I said. I heard it then, faint but distinct. A long, slow exhale that wasn't his. Too close to his microphone. Too deliberate. Daniel, was that you? No, he whispered. That was her. For a second, I couldn't speak. My mind was racing. Maybe someone was actually in a crawl space above him. Maybe this was some kind of kidnapping. I started opening up the old call trace software we hardly used anymore. Then Daniel spoke again, almost to himself. She's smiling. The way he said it, flat, resigned, made my stomach knot. Daniel, I'm going to ask you to. The line popped. Just for a second, a burst of static, and then silence. Daniel? Can you hear me? More silence. Then, far away, like it was coming from the other end of a long hallway. She wants to come down. I gripped the headset tighter. Daniel, listen to me. Do not move. Stay where you are until help arrives. Do you understand? I can't. What do you mean you can't? She's right above me. If I move, she'll follow. Something in his voice changed then. Not just fear, but something heavier. Resignation. Like he knew what was going to happen. And then I heard it. A low creak, like wood bending under weight. Then another. And another. Daniel, are you? She's lowering herself, he whispered. I stood without realizing it, heart pounding in my throat. Daniel, I need you to keep talking to me. Tell me what's happening. He let out a shaky laugh. You wouldn't believe me. Try me. Another creak. Louder this time. Her hands are long. Too long. They're reaching for the bed. I started typing notes into the system, desperate for something to ping. But the call didn't register. No record. It was like it wasn't happening. His voice cut off with a sharp inhale. Then nothing. Daniel? I waited, holding my breath. Then, softly, she's here. The line went dead. I stood there for a long time, listening to the empty hum of the office. When I tried to call the number back, it didn't exist. I checked the call log. There was no entry for line 2 at 2:14 a.m. I sat down slowly, staring at the dark screen in front of me. That was 3 nights ago, and every night since. At exactly 2:14 a.m., I swear I hear breathing in my headset. When a call dropped that night, I just sat there for a second, staring at the blinking cursor on my screen. The breathing was still in my head. Slow, uneven, too close to the microphone. I wrote down everything the man said, word for word, before it could fade. I'd learned the hard way that in this job, your memory isn't as reliable as you think. Fear can rearrange details. Your brain smooths over the edges it doesn't want to keep. But I didn't want to lose a single piece of this. She's crawling above me. That was the phrase he kept repeating. Like if he stopped saying it, she might actually move. Our system logs every call with GPS coordinates, so I pulled his up. The numbers blinked in the corner of my screen. Lat, 38.9024. Long, -77.0220. I copied them into the mapping software, expecting to see a street address, maybe a house with a crawl space like he said. Instead, it loaded a field. Not a yard, not a farm, just empty grass. The satellite image showed a wide, flat clearing with nothing but weeds and dirt. No houses, no sheds, not even a damn tree. I thought maybe the GPS was glitching. It happens sometimes, especially in rural areas. But then I saw something that made my stomach knot. This field, it was only about 20 minutes outside of town. I knew the area. I'd driven past it 100 times. It's the kind of place you don't even notice. Just a stretch of nothing between 2 narrow roads. No mailbox, no driveway, and definitely no crawl space. I zoomed in until the image pixelated into green and brown squares. Still nothing. But the man's voice, the way it cracked when he whispered, that wasn't someone standing in a field. He was somewhere dark, enclosed. I tried the number he called from. It rang once, then went straight to a dead tone. Not voicemail, just dead. I sat there with my headset resting against my collarbone, feeling the hum of the servers in the walls. Everyone else in the room was focused on their own calls, their own blinking screens. It was strange how alone you can feel surrounded by people. I opened the incident form and typed. Caller reports unknown female crawling above him. Caller states he can hear breathing. Reports location as crawl space. GPS coordinates place caller in open field. Call disconnected abruptly. I didn't send it yet. I just stared at the cursor again. Because there was something else. Something I hadn't told anyone. When the call was fading, just before it cut out, I thought I heard something that wasn't his voice. It wasn't words. More like a sound someone makes when they're trying not to be heard. A wet inhale. A tiny scrape. Like a knee dragging across wood. I didn't want to write that part down. If I wrote it, it would be real. The next night, I kept thinking about the coordinates. It's not like we're supposed to follow up on every weird call. We'd never sleep. But this one had dug in. Around 2 a.m., the floor was quiet, so I pulled the map up again. I opened the street view camera from the nearest road. The field looked even more empty than I remembered. Just a low fence, bent in the middle. The grass was tall and patchy, lit pale by the moon. But then I noticed something in the far right of the image. A shape in the grass. Too dark to be just weeds. It looked like a square, maybe 4 by 4 feet. I leaned closer to the screen. The pixels swam. It could have been anything. An old pallet, a shadow from the fence, but something about it felt deliberate. Almost like a door lying flat on the ground. The air in the dispatch room suddenly felt stale. I tried the number again. Same dead tone. Part of me hoped it would ring, because if it rang, then maybe I could hear his voice again. Hear her too, if she was still there. But the call never went through. 2 days passed without another word from him. I told myself it was over. He'd been drunk, maybe, or lost in the woods with his phone glitching. People hear strange things in the dark. I'd done my part, logged the call, saved the coordinates. But that night, during my break, I couldn't help it. I drove out there. The roads were empty, the kind of quiet where your headlights feel too bright. Every time I passed a reflector post, it flashed like an eye. When I turned onto the narrow road that bordered the field, I saw it immediately. That bent section of fence, the grass moving in the wind, and yes, the dark square in the middle of the field. It was real. I pulled over, killed the engine, and just sat there for a second. My hands were tight on the wheel. The air smelled like damp soil and cold metal. I told myself I was just going to look. From a fence. That's it. The grass whispered as I stepped off the road. The dark square grew larger, and I realized it wasn't a pallet. It was wood, gray and splintered. 4 boards nailed together. And in the center, a metal ring. Like a handle. I didn't touch it. I didn't want to know if it would move. Because in that moment, standing there under the moon, I remembered exactly how the man's voice had sounded. How he whispered she's right above me like it was the last thing he'd ever say. And I realized something. If he was telling the truth, if there really was a crawl space, and he was trapped inside, then from where I was standing, looking down at that wooden square, I was the one right above him. I left without touching it. I told myself it was none of my business. That if he was still down there, someone else would find him. Someone braver. But back at the station, when my shift ended, I checked the incident log. My report had been flagged. Not because of what I wrote, but because of what was added. At the bottom of the entry, under my notes, there was a new line in a font I didn't recognize. Update. Caller coordinates rechecked. No structure found. Area now flagged for restricted access. There was no signature. No initials. Just that. I sat there in the glow of the monitors, my reflection pale in the glass, wondering who decided that field was off limits. And more importantly, why? Because when I closed my eyes, I could still hear it. That slow, damp inhale, and the scrape of something moving in the dark, just inches from my head that I don't remember what time it was when I answered him again. The call had been going on for so long that the clock on my monitor felt meaningless. My headset was starting to ache against my ears, my neck tight from leaning into the microphone. The man's voice was still there, shallow, trembling breaths between every word. He hadn't moved. Or maybe he couldn't. I'm still here. I told him, trying to keep my voice steady. We've got units on the way. Just stay with me, all right. There was no answer at first. I thought maybe the connection had dropped again. But then I heard it, the slow, wet inhale in the background. Not his breathing. Someone else's. It was higher pitched, closer to the mic than before. She's above me, he whispered. I already knew that. He'd been saying it for the last 40 minutes. But something about the way he said it this time made my stomach tighten. Like it wasn't just a statement anymore. It was a warning. She's moving? I asked, keeping my voice low without really knowing why. No, not unless he stopped mid-sentence. I waited, and that's when I noticed it. A faint scraping sound over the line. Slow, deliberate, like a fingernail dragging against wood. Then it stopped. The silence felt heavy. I didn't even breathe. She moves when you stop talking, he said finally. His voice cracked on the last word, almost like a child's. For a few seconds, I didn't understand. And then it hit me. He wanted me to keep talking. Not to reassure him. Not to calm him down. But to keep her from moving. Okay, I said quickly. All right, I'm not going to stop talking. I didn't even know what to say. My mind went blank, and I just started telling him random things. The weather. The fact that I was drinking bad coffee. Anything to fill the space. The whole time, the line stayed quiet. No scraping, no crawling. But then I made the mistake of pausing. Just for a second. That's when I heard it. Fast, heavy shuffling overhead. The sound of someone dragging themselves across a tight space. The man's breathing turned frantic. She's closer now, he whispered. I started talking again, my words tumbling out too fast, too loud. It's okay. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. The noises stopped. I wanted to believe this was just paranoia, that he was in a normal attic, maybe hearing an animal. But there was something wrong about the rhythm of the movement. It wasn't random. It was responding to us. Can you describe her? I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. There was a pause, not mine this time, but his. And in that split second, I heard it again. The scraping, the shift of weight. She's flat, he said finally, like she's pressed against the wood. I think she doesn't have bones. My mouth went dry. How do you know that? I can hear her, folding. I gripped the edge of my desk, so hard my fingers hurt. The location data on my screen still showed nothing. An empty field, no structure, no crawl space. But the sound in my headset was real. I could hear it as clearly as my own breathing. Why are you there? I asked him, my voice shaking now. She told me to come. Who did? He didn't answer right away. I was afraid to press him, afraid the silence would make her move again. So I just kept going. What's your name? Another pause. This one was longer. And in that pause, the sound changed. It wasn't just crawling anymore. It was the sound of something sliding down. Boards creaking underweight. A whisper of fabric against wood. I started talking faster. Anything, everything, but the noise didn't stop this time. It got closer. Louder. She's dropping down, he whispered. His voice was so faint I barely caught it. Listen to me, I said, panic making my words spill. Do not stop talking. Tell me anything. Tell me your name. But he didn't. The scraping turned into a heavy thump on the floor beside him. My headset crackled like the line itself flinched. I could hear him crying now, shallow, desperate sobs. She's here, he breathed. What does she want? I asked without thinking. His answer was so quiet I almost missed it. She wants you to stop talking. Something in my chest twisted. The hairs on my arms stood up. Because for the first time since the call began, I didn't know if he meant me or him. I kept talking anyway. My voice was hoarse, shaking, barely making sense. The line hissed in my ear. And then, for the first time in over an hour, I heard her. Not the movement, not the scraping, but a low, wet exhale right into the mic. Not his. Hers that I remember looking at the clock and feeling my chest tighten. 4:12 a.m. It was still dark outside the dispatch center windows, that deep, hollow darkness where the world feels like it's holding its breath. The caller, the one from earlier, the man trapped somewhere, he hadn't hung up. His breathing was still in my ear, steady but faint, like he was lying down with his mouth just near the phone. No talking, no shouting, no movement, just that sound. It had been hours since the coordinates came through. I'd stared at them so long my eyes felt dry and raw, but every time I traced a point on the map, I came to the same conclusion. There was nothing there. No house, no shed, no abandoned building, just an empty field on the edge of an old county line. When the first responders finally got close, their radios crackled through my headset. Dispatch, this is Unit 3. We're about 2 minutes out from the coordinates. I swallowed and leaned into my mic. Copy, Unit 3. Be advised the area should be a field. No structures listed. There was a pause. Understood. The man's breathing hit my ear again. I pulled the mic closer. Sir, can you hear me? Help is almost there. Can you? A small, almost wet exhale slid into the line. Not words. Not quite a sigh. But something in it felt aware. I kept talking, filling the silence. Part of me remembered what he said earlier about the woman above him moving when the talking stopped. I didn't want to test that theory. Unit 3, you'll be arriving from the west. You should see a barbed wire fence about a quarter mile before the point. It might be old farm property. Proceed with. Then something broke through the radio. Not his voice. Not theirs. Breathing. The same steady inhale and exhale I'd been listening to for hours. Only now, it was coming through the responder's channel. I froze. Unit 3, do you hear that? They didn't answer right away. The channel was open, but there was just the shuffle of boots, the low rumble of their engine, and over it all that slow breathing. Finally, one of them spoke, voice low. Dispatch, yeah. We hear it. Where's it coming from? I looked at my screens. I wanted to tell them it was still on my line with the original caller, that it couldn't be in their radios unless there wasn't really a line at all. But I didn't say that. They pulled up to the coordinates at 417. The driver clicked on the spotlight and swept the field. I watched on a live drone feed the county kept for emergency situations, a grainy, colorless view of flat grass, broken only by a few leaning fence posts and scattered weeds. No house, no opening. No sign of anyone. Dispatch, we're here, one of them said. His voice was calm, but I could hear it. That tightness. That space in a man's throat when he's trying not to sound uneasy. But, there's nothing. I gripped my pen so hard the clip dug into my finger. Check the ground. Holes, crawl spaces, anything. They fanned out. The camera followed their lights across the grass, beams cutting through faint morning mist. And then I heard it again, clear this time, almost louder, breathing over both my headset and their open radio channel. I pressed the mic button. Unit 3, confirm. Hold on, one of them cut in. It's on all our radios now. We killed the engines, and it's still there. It's like the line hissed. Not static, just air moving through something. Like it's right next to me, the officer whispered. Something moved in the background of the drone feed. Not much, just a flicker, a subtle ripple in the grass, like a snake had slid beneath it. I leaned closer to the screen. Unit 3, north side of the field. Do you see that? They swung their lights toward the area. Grass. Dark. Empty. We got nothing here, dispatch. The breathing in my ear quickened. Not a lot, but enough that my pulse spiked trying to match it. I thought about telling them to back out, to just leave, but the thing about dispatch work is you don't give up on a call. Even if it doesn't make sense. Even if the location's wrong. You keep going until you can say for sure there's no one to save. One of the responders called out, found something. Hold on. The drone feed shifted to show a patch of earth that looked darker than the rest. Flattened. Pressed down, like something had been lying there for a long time. Looks like a hatch, the officer said. Except it didn't. Not to me. It just looked like ground. Solid, unbroken ground. They all crowded around it. Boots scuffed dirt. One of them knelt and ran his hand along the surface. And then every single one of their radios, plus my headset, filled with a single, sharp inhale. Like whatever had been breathing finally stopped and noticed them. Dispatch. The officer's voice was almost a whisper. The ground's warm. Warm. In the middle of a cold, August dawn. They started scraping at it, trying to find an edge. And that's when the noise changed. Not breathing anymore. Not exactly. It was lower now. Heavier. Like someone was dragging themselves closer. I pressed the mic. Unit 3, step back. Repeat, step back now. But none of them moved. They just stared at the ground as the noise in their radios seemed to circle them, switching from one speaker to the next. Then, in my ear, a voice. Soft. Familiar. She's not above me anymore. The line went dead. The radios in the field exploded with overlapping static and breath and something else, like wet fabric being pulled through wood. One of the men shouted. Lights swung wildly across the feed. The drone caught glimpses, hands grabbing a gear, boots stumbling in the grass, one of them looking down at his own radio like it had spoken to him. Back to the truck. Now, someone yelled. They didn't all make it at the same time. The driver reached the vehicle first, slamming his door, but two were still in the field when the feed shifted. I don't even know how to describe it. 1 second the drone was showing grainy footage of men running through grass. The next, the frame went dark, like the lens had been covered. Then it came back on, but the view was wrong. Tilted, crooked, and in that crooked frame, something was there. Not in the air, not on the ground. Between. The best way I can say it is it was shaped like the space under a bed, or inside a crawl space. Flat above, flat below, dark on both sides. But it was standing in the open field. One of the responders was staring at it. He still had his light, but it didn't seem to reach. I yelled into the mic, "Unit 3, get out of there." The driver's voice cracked back through. "Dispatch, they're not listening, they." The radio's filled with breathing again. Not steady now. Fast. Excited. And then both channels, the field unit and my original call, cut off at the same time. The drone feed froze on that tilted frame. No movement. No sound. We found the truck later. Both men inside, shaken, pale. The others weren't with them. No sign of struggle. No blood. No tracks leading away. Just an empty field. The same one that's been on our maps for years. The one with no house. No barn. No crawl space. But sometimes, when the center is quiet and no one's talking, I still hear breathing in the walls that I've taken thousands of calls in my time as a dispatcher. Accidents. Fires. Panicked voices from people in moments they'll remember for the rest of their lives. But this one didn't feel like it came from a living place. It was late, close to 2 a.m., when the storm finally died down. No rain, no wind, just that eerie, hollow silence storms leave behind. The station was quiet too. My partner, Dean, had stepped out for a cigarette, and I was just staring at the blinking lights on the console, letting my eyes lose focus. That's when I noticed the board was dead. No incoming lines. No outgoing either. Every channel showed no signal. The power grid map on my monitor was a mess. Half the county was dark. I tried calling the utility company's line, but even that wouldn't connect. The internet was gone too. It was like our whole corner of the state had been cut off from the rest of the world. That's when the phone rang. Not my cell. Not the radio. The landline. The one that only works if the old copper wires are intact. The ring was sharp, almost too loud in the silence. I froze, because it didn't make sense. If everything was down, how was this getting through? I answered without thinking. "County Dispatch," I said. For a second, I thought no one was there. Just static. And under it, something else. A slow, ragged breathing. Not the kind you hear when someone's crying or panicking. This was heavier. Wet. Like whoever it was had been running, but not from something normal. "Hello?" I asked. Nothing. I leaned closer to the mic. "This is Dispatch. Are you in an emergency?" Then a man's voice came through. So fast, I barely caught the words. "They're in my house. They're in my house right now." I sat up straight. "Sir, who's in your house?" He didn't answer right away. I heard him whisper something. Not to me, but to himself. It sounded like, "Don't move, don't move." "Sir, I need you to tell me where you are," I said, my voice low, steady. "County Line Road," he said, quick. "Number 78. Please, you have to hurry." The lights went out, and now, they're moving. "Who's moving, sir?" He took a breath. I could hear it shake in my ear. "Shadows." I thought I'd misheard. "Shadows. They're moving like they're alive. They're not supposed to be here." His voice cracked, high and thin. I saw one in the hallway, and when I looked away, it got closer. I wrote the address down, even though my stomach had just knotted itself into something hard. "Okay, I'm sending help. Stay on the line with me, all right?" He didn't say yes. Didn't say anything. All I heard was the faint creak of floorboards on his end, and his breathing quickened. "Sir, are you safe right now?" "They're watching me," he whispered. "From the walls. I can see them moving under the door." A part of me wanted to think he was drunk, or having some kind of episode. But his voice didn't sound like that. It sounded like pure, uncut terror. "Do you have a weapon?" I asked. "Don't need one. Won't help. I tried already." The bullet went right through it. "Through the shadow?" I said before I could stop myself. There was silence. Then a sound that made my skin crawl, a low, drawn-out scraping, like nails over wood, but muffled. He whispered again, "It's coming in." I could hear something on his end. A shift in the air, maybe, like the phone had moved slightly. The floorboards groaned again. "Sir, listen to me. I need you to keep talking. Don't stop talking, okay?" "Why?" "Just keep talking to me. Trust me." Because in the back of my mind, I remembered the old stories, the ones my grandmother told me when I was little, about the things that move in silence, how they only get closer when the world stops making noise. Dean came back into the room right then, brushing rain off his jacket. I motioned him over fast, muting the receiver just long enough to whisper, "We've got an intruder call on County Line. Get a unit out there now." He nodded and picked up the radio, then frowned. No signal. The storm must have knocked out the towers. I cursed under my breath and unmuted the call. "Sir, what's your name?" "Tom," he said. His voice was trembling so bad I had to strain to understand him. "All right, Tom, we're going to get someone out to you. But until then, I need you to keep telling me what's happening." "There's one in the kitchen now," he said. "It's taller than the fridge. It bends wrong, like it's trying to fit inside the room." "Is it looking at you?" "It doesn't have eyes, but I know it sees me." My pulse was hammering. I kept glancing at the clock, at the silent radios. Dean was trying his cell, pacing, shaking his head. "Tom, are there any neighbors close by?" "No one. Not for a mile." The scraping sound came again, louder. He let out a sharp gasp. "It's in the hallway." "Oh God, it's coming this way." "Tom, talk to me. Keep talking." His breathing was rapid now, almost gasps. "Why can't you hear it? It's shaking the walls. It's—" He stopped. I thought the line had gone dead. "Tom." When he spoke again, it was so quiet I almost didn't catch it. "It's at the door. It's—" The call cut off. I stared at the dead line, the dull tone in my ear. Dean stopped pacing, looking at me. "What happened?" Line dropped. We sat there in silence for a second. Then, like it had been listening the whole time, the landline rang again. My hand felt heavy when I picked it up. County Dispatch. This time, there was no voice. Just that slow, wet breathing. Dean finally managed to get through to a deputy about 15 minutes later by driving halfway up the ridge to get a signal. They sent 2 units toward County Line Road, but when they got near where 78 should have been, there was nothing. No house, no mailbox, just a patch of dirt and overgrown grass. When they radioed that back, I thought they'd gotten turnaround. But I'd taken the address down exactly as he'd said it. The weirdest part? The copper landlines out there have been down for over a year. That night, I went home and tried to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing a tall shape in the corner of my room, bending itself wrong to fit inside the space. And when I rolled over, facing the wall, I swore I felt it get closer, that I could still hear his breathing when I closed my eyes. That shallow, panic pull of air. The kind you hear from someone who's already been running for too long. I had gone home after my shift, but the call wouldn't leave my head. The man in the blackout zone, the one whose landline had somehow cut through dead phone lines, had been screaming about something inside his house. Shadows, he called them. I didn't tell anyone about that part, not even in the report. But his voice, I can still hear how it broke in the middle of words, like he was forcing them out before something took the chance away. When I came back for my next shift, I saw the note on the corkboard. County Line blackout, power grid failure, no ETA on repairs. That whole rural strip was still dark. No cell towers, no streetlights, no working radios except ours. Around 9:14 p.m., the console lit up again. The same blinking number. That same impossible landline. I answered before the first ring even finished. "This is County Dispatch." "It's not stopping," he cut in. No hello, no hesitation. Just those 3 words, fast, like he'd been holding them in all day. I swallowed, kept my voice calm. "Sir, is this the same?" "They're not leaving," he said, talking over me. "They don't walk right. They don't. I don't know how to say it." I look away, and they're closer. But they're not. They're not moving like people. I pressed the headset harder to my ear, like that would make his voice clearer. But his breathing was louder now, ragged. The kind you get from trying not to cry. "How many of them?" I asked. Silence. Then, I don't know, because they vanish when I blink. The words hit harder than they should have. My skin prickled under my shirt. "Vanish?" I asked before I could stop myself. I look away and they're gone. I blink and the spot's empty. But when I look somewhere else, his voice trailed, and I heard something soft, a low thump like weight shifting on old wood. "They're there again." I could feel my own pulse in my jaw. "Where are you right now?" "In my kitchen." I typed notes into the log, even though I knew no one would read them for hours. "Are you safe? Are the doors locked?" "Yes," he said, but it was too fast. Too sure. "Doesn't matter. They were inside when I locked them." That's when I realized I hadn't heard him breathe for several seconds. I only noticed because I'd started holding my own breath too. Then the phone crackled. Not the kind of static you get from a bad line. This was sharper, wet, like fabric tearing close to the receiver. "Sir," I said. "I saw one," he whispered. My fingers paused on the keyboard. "Where?" "By the hallway," he said. "It's—" He stopped. I heard it this time, a faint tap, tap, tap. Slow, like fingernails against wood. "They don't have faces," he said. "Or maybe they do, but it's not in the right place." The line went quiet except for the faint buzz of the blackout hum. I've worked dispatch long enough to know that silence isn't safe. It's usually the part people remember before everything breaks. Then the tapping stopped. "They're closer," he said. I caught myself gripping the desk, so hard that my knuckles were aching. "Sir, I need you to keep talking to me." "I'm not blinking," he said. His voice cracked. "If I don't blink, they can't." He inhaled sharply. "One of them is smiling now." I didn't want to picture it, but my brain filled in the gaps anyway. "I think they want me to blink," he said. "I think that's the game." My throat felt dry. "Help is coming. I just need you to—" Something slammed on his end. Not a little noise, the kind that shakes the air in your ear. I blinked. I didn't even realize I had gotten halfway out of my chair until I heard my own headset cord pull taut. "What do you see now?" "They're gone." For a second, I felt relief. Then I remembered what he'd said before. "They're gone where?" I asked. "I don't know." His voice was so thin, I had to lean in to catch it. I think they're behind me now." The call stuttered, a weird clicking distortion, like the line was folding in on itself. "Sir, listen to me." The sound that came next didn't belong in a human throat. It was a short, wet bark of air, like a laugh stripped down to something primal. Then nothing. The line didn't even disconnect. It just went empty. I sat there for a long time after that, the phone still against my ear, listening for any sign that he was still there. At 9:31, the line finally went dead. They told me later that no units were close enough to respond that night. The roads in the county line were half blocked from storm debris. Crews wouldn't make it in until morning. I should have gone home. I should have put it away in a mental drawer with all the other calls I couldn't do anything about. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. Not their faces, because I couldn't. Just that empty space where something should have been. And the way he said, smiling. I don't remember deciding to do it, but around midnight, I pulled up the old paper maps from the wall cabinet. County line was just black space on the power outage feed, but on paper it was still a web of pale lines and little square markers for houses. His address was listed. I traced the route with my finger. 2 main roads in, both dead ends past his block. That whole stretch was marked in faded pencil from years ago, dead zone. I didn't know what that meant back then. I couldn't sleep after my shift. Every noise outside sounded wrong. Every shadow from the streetlight stretched a little too far into the room. At one point I woke up and found my eyes already open. I didn't remember opening them. I just hadn't blinked yet. The next evening, I came in early, just in case. The board still said the same thing, county line blackout, and no service. At 8:57, the console lit up, that same impossible number. I answered. For a moment, there was nothing. No breathing, no voice, just a faint, rhythmic sound, like something brushing slowly over the receiver. Then he spoke. "They're still here." I didn't breathe. "They don't care about the dark," he said. "It's me they want. They wait until I'm tired, until my eyes sting." "Sir, you need to leave the house," I said, already knowing he wouldn't. "They'll follow," he said. The brushing sound grew louder. "They're right outside the kitchen now. They keep their hands on the walls when they move." I can hear the paint flaking. The call dipped into static again, but his voice cut through, soft and urgent. "If I hang up, I'll have to use my hands to hold my eyes open. And if I do that, I can't lock the door." I pressed my thumb hard against the desk to keep it from shaking. "We're sending help. They won't make it in time." The line warped again. Something like a whisper slid through the static, but it wasn't him. I don't know how to explain it. It felt like someone had leaned in right beside me and spoken directly into my ear. It said my name. The hair on my neck rose so fast it hurt. "Sir, did you?" But his voice was gone. And just like before, the call didn't end. It just sat there, silent, waiting. I think that's the part that's been clawing at me since. Not the things he saw. Not even the sound of my own name whispered from a place it shouldn't have come from. It's the silence after. Like the call is still going somewhere. Like it's waiting for me to blink that I've done late-night dispatch for almost 10 years, but I'd never heard the line go so quiet. Not like this. The last thing I remember before it happened was the sound of Officer Daniel's voice, his cruiser humming in the background. County Line Road. Passing marker 14 now, he said. And then nothing. Not the kind of nothing you get when someone lets go of the button. Not static. Not wind. Just a flat, empty silence. At first, I thought it was my headset. I tapped the cord, shifted the earpiece. Nothing. Unit 1-4. Confirm your location, I said. My voice sounded too loud in my own ears. No answer. I tried his partner's channel. Nothing there, either. It's strange, when you've worked in this job long enough, you know the sound of dead air. Usually, there's something under it. A faint hiss. Maybe the hum of an engine. Sometimes even the thump of a heartbeat if their mic is clipped too close. But this was clean. Too clean. Like the line wasn't just empty, like it didn't exist at all. I switched to GPS tracking. The system lagged, then spun the little blue circle like it was thinking too hard. When it finally updated, the coordinates showed them just past mile marker 15. Then the icon blinked once and vanished. I stared at the map, tried a manual refresh. Nothing came back. I leaned toward my supervisor, Pam, who was scrolling through a report at her desk. You seeing Daniels on your screen? I asked. She glanced at me, her brow pulling tight. He's gone. Yeah, just poof. Pam tried it herself. She's not the type to get rattled easily, but I could see the confusion in her eyes when the system refused to load. This happens sometimes, she said, but her voice didn't have much conviction. Could be a tower down. I wanted to believe that. Except towers don't just vanish without throwing alerts. And the blackout, remember, the blackout was still rolling through the county. We already had half the grid dead. Cell towers were on backup batteries, and some of them had already burned out hours ago. But this wasn't just a dead zone. I keyed up the mic again. Unit 1-4, status check. Nothing. Pam frowned. Call M direct. I tried Daniel's cell. Straight to voicemail. Tried the other unit. Same thing. The blackout was bad enough. But the last thing Daniels had said before this happened, he'd been telling me about the house. Yet dispatch, I see it. Lights are. That was the moment the line had gone dead. I stared at the timestamp. 1 mile from the scene. The quiet mile. I didn't know it yet, but that's what we'd call it later. The other 2 patrol cars were still 10 minutes out, but I put the call to them anyway. Be advised, Unit 1-4 has lost comms past marker 15. Exercise caution. Unit 1-7 came back immediately. Copy that. You think they hit a dead spot? Pam leaned in and pressed the transmit button herself. Dead spot or something else. Just keep your eyes open. That waiting time, I hate it. There's this helplessness to it. You're stuck in a room full of glowing monitors while the people you're supposed to guide are out there, somewhere, in the dark. And I kept thinking about the man who'd called in. His voice, that shaking breath, the way he'd whispered about shadows in his house. The kind of fear that gets under your skin and stays there. I'd heard fear before, real fear, but there was something in his tone that had felt wrong. Not the fear of someone who might be in danger. The fear of someone who knows they're already too late. 5 minutes later, Unit 1-7 checked in. Dispatch, passing marker 13 now. I nodded to Pam. At least they were still coming through. But then, as their engine noise crackled faintly through my headset, I heard it. The drop. 1 second they were there, engine humming, mic clicking. The next, silence. Unit 1-7, confirm. No answer. GPS blinked, and then their blue dot vanished, right at marker 15. I swallowed hard. That's 2 units. Pam didn't answer right away. She reached for the landline, the old copper line that runs into the building, and called highway. Any outages near county line? She asked. I could hear the reply faintly through the receiver. Whoever she was talking to sounded just as puzzled as we were. No construction. No storm damage. No reports. Just black. The third car, Unit 1-9, was still coming from the east side. The long way. That route avoided county line until the very last stretch. When I warned them, their reply was calm, steady. We'll approach slow. If we lose comms, we'll try to double back. But my gut told me if they hit that mile, they weren't coming back. Not right away. I couldn't shake it. The way the signal didn't degrade, just cut. Like someone had unplugged a cord from the world. I kept trying Daniel's mic every 2 minutes, just in case. Each time, I heard nothing. It felt wrong even to call it nothing. Nothing should have a sound. This didn't. It's hard to explain unless you've heard it yourself. Like standing in a field at 3 a.m., no wind, no insects, no distant hum of life. Not even your own breath, somehow. A silence so total it presses against your skin, almost like static, except there's no sound at all. Unit 19 reported passing marker 12. I held my breath. 13. Still with you, dispatch, they said. 14. Copy, still here. Then, 15. And the line was gone. Pam swore under her breath. That's all 3. I didn't want to admit it, but my chest felt tight. 3 units, all gone in the same stretch of road. No static, no distortion, just erased. We tried backup channels. Satellite pings. Nothing worked. 1 mile. 1 single mile of road where the world stopped existing. I kept glancing at the clock, half expecting them to pop back and like nothing had happened. But the minutes kept sliding past. 5, 10, 15. No calls. No dots on the map. Then, just as I was about to try the landline again, my console blinked. Incoming. The ID showed as Daniel's unit. I slammed the answer key. Daniel's? The voice that came through was faint. Strained. Dispatch. We're still driving. Still driving? My eyes flicked to the GPS, still blank. How long? I asked. There was a pause. I could hear someone breathing in the background. Quick, shallow. Too long, he said. We should have been there by now. Feels like the road's not ending. Pam was leaning over my shoulder now, listening. Can you see anything? I asked. Another pause. Just trees. Same trees we passed before. Over and over. His voice cracked a little on the last word. We haven't seen the house again. Or the marker. Just. The line cut. No click. No fade. Just gone. Pam didn't say anything for a long moment. Neither did I. The blackout had turned into something else. Something I couldn't explain with towers or outages or storms. And that mile, that quiet mile, it wasn't just a gap in the signal. It was a gap in the world. Sitting there in the glow of the monitors, I realized I was gripping the mic so hard my hand had gone numb. I loosened my fingers. The room felt colder than before. And in that cold, heavy quiet, I thought about the man in the house. The one who'd seen the shadows move. If our officers couldn't even reach him, if the road itself was broken, then whatever was in that house was still there. And it was alone. Or maybe it wasn't that I don't remember how long I stayed crouched on the floor after that last scream. It's strange you'd think in a moment like that, you'd be aware of every detail. The ticking of a clock, your own breathing, the creak of the walls. But it was like my mind had shut most of it out. I just sat there, my back against the desk, clutching the radio in both hands, staring at the little red light on it as if it could somehow anchor me. The only thing that made it through that fog was his voice. That man's voice. The way it cracked when he said it. They're not moving, they're waiting. I keep replaying it. Every syllable. It wasn't just fear. It was resignation. Like he'd already seen what was going to happen to him, and there was no way to stop it. When the radio went silent, I tried calling back. My voice came out shaky, too high, like I didn't trust my own throat to form words. Unit, do you copy? Hello? Can you? Static. I didn't even get the courtesy of a click. Just the hum of the dispatch room's fluorescent lights and the faint hiss of the deadline. The officers who'd been dispatched earlier, I hadn't heard from them either. They dropped out somewhere in the quiet mile. And now, the man himself. There was this horrible moment where I realized I was the only person on the line anymore. Not the only one working, the only one in the world who knew what was happening in that house. And whatever was happening, it wasn't done. You know how people say silence can be loud? I used to think that was just a metaphor, but no. It's real. You can feel it pressing in on you, crowding the edges of your hearing, until your brain starts inventing things to fill it. That's when I heard. I don't know what to call it. Not breathing. Not exactly. More like something brushing against itself. Like fabric shifting in a closet when no one's there. Soft. Slow. Patient. It wasn't in the room with me. I'm not saying that. It was in my headset. I froze, barely daring to breathe. The sound didn't change. Just that faint movement, like something adjusting itself somewhere far away. I whispered into the mic. Hello. For a second, the sound stopped. That was somehow worse. I yanked the headset off and tossed it onto the desk, my heart pounding so hard I could see my shirt move with it. I told myself it was feedback, or interference, or something from another channel bleeding through. But the sound, it didn't feel like static. Static is random, chaotic. This felt like it was listening. It took 20 minutes before we got confirmation that backup had been sent. 20 long minutes where the lights seemed too dim, the room too cold, and the shadows in the corners seemed heavier than they should have been. I didn't want to look at them. I've never been superstitious, but that night, I wouldn't let my eyes rest anywhere too long. Every time I blinked, I thought of what the man had said earlier. How he described those shadow figures that were gone when he opened his eyes. And I realized that means they only move when you can't see them. So if they weren't moving now, the call from the field came in at 3:12 a.m. The voice on the other end wasn't an officer. It was shaky, female, whispering too fast. I almost didn't recognize her, but it was Officer Hensley. She kept saying my name over and over, like repeating it would keep her tethered here. They're everywhere, she said. In the road. Just standing there. I asked who. My voice was almost as shaky as hers. She didn't answer. Just whispered. They're not shadows. I didn't understand at first. They're not flat, she said, like she was trying to convince herself. They're thick. They block the headlights. Her voice broke. I could hear her trying to breathe quietly, like she didn't want something to hear her. They're looking at the car, she whispered. Not at us. Just waiting. That word again. Waiting. The man had said it. Now she was saying it. I asked where her partner was, but she didn't answer. The radio started clicking, like she was trying to hold the button halfway, without transmitting. I could hear muffled noises, not words, not footsteps. Just that same faint fabric-like shifting. Then, a sudden tap, like knuckles on glass. Once. Twice. Then silence. The transmission ended. I don't know how long I sat there before realizing I was holding my breath. My knuckles were white around the mic. I called for her again. Nothing. By then my stomach felt cold. My body knew something my brain didn't want to process. You ever have that feeling where you know something's close, even if you can't see it? Not because you hear it, but because some primitive part of you is screaming that it's there? I felt that then, and it wasn't directed at Hensley. It was here. I didn't hear anything in the room, not at first. But my eyes, they kept wanting to flick to the far corner near the filing cabinets. The air felt different there. Thicker. Like the shadows weren't just shadows anymore. I tried to keep working. Keep my eyes on the desk. Pretend nothing was there. But every few seconds, I'd blink and swear the angle of the darkness had shifted. Like something was leaning just slightly closer. It never moved while I was looking. But it also never went away. I don't remember deciding to get up. I just remember standing, moving slowly toward the door, keeping my eyes locked on that corner. And then, I made the mistake of blinking. When I opened my eyes, the corner was empty. And that was somehow worse than if it hadn't been. The backup never made it to the house. When the sun came up, they found the patrol car a mile down the road, doors open, lights still flashing. No sign of Hensley or her partner. No footprints past the car. No tire tracks turning away. It was like they just stepped out into the dark and disappeared. I didn't tell anyone about the thing in the corner. I didn't tell them about the sound of my headset, or how I kept feeling that same thick stillness in the air every time someone said the word waiting. But I'll tell you now, and maybe you'll believe me. I don't think they move the way we do. I don't think they're shadows. I think they're the dark, and they don't need to chase you. They just need to stand there and wait for you to blink. When I first started working nights at the dispatch center, I thought the hardest part would be staying awake. I was wrong. The hardest part is the silence. Day shifts are a constant hum of voices, phones ringing, people moving in and out of the room. At night, it's just you, the low buzz of the fluorescent lights, and the occasional burst of static from the radio. Most calls are routine, false alarms, drunk drivers, some guy who locked himself out of his truck. But on some nights, nothing comes in at all. It was one of those nights, the kind where the clock feels like it's stuck, where even your own breathing sounds too loud. I'd been on the job less than 3 months, still learning the quirks of the place. The senior dispatcher, Warren, was on vacation, so it was just me. At around 1:15 a.m., I decided to make coffee. It wasn't about staying awake. I just needed something to break the monotony. The coffee station was at the far end of the hall, past the storage room. The door to that storage room was usually locked. I'd passed it 100 times without thinking about it. But that night, as I walked by, I noticed the door was open. Not wide open, just enough for a thin strip of darkness to spill into the hall. It made me slow down. We don't really keep anything interesting in there. Mostly old forms, outdated equipment, spare headsets. But something about seeing it open when it shouldn't be, it felt like catching a glimpse into someone else's room. I told myself it was probably cleaning staff. Still, I peeked inside. The air in there was different, stiller, heavier. My eyes adjusted to the dim light from the hall. Rows of metal shelves stretched back into the dark. Boxes, binders, dusty old monitors. It smelled faintly of paper and mildew. That's when I saw it. A box on the floor, near the back. It didn't look like it belonged there. Most of the other boxes were labeled with department codes or inventory tags. This one was plain cardboard, no markings. The top was folded shut but not taped. A thick layer of dust covered it, except for 2 clean handprints on the sides, like someone had picked it up recently. I don't know why I walked over. Curiosity, I guess. Or maybe it was just that there was nothing else happening that night. When I pulled the flaps open, the smell hit me first, a faint, dry, metallic scent like old pennies. Inside were cassette tapes, dozens of them. They weren't in cases, just stacked haphazardly, some with masking tape labels, some completely blank. I reached in and picked one up. The label was handwritten in faded ink. March 14th, 2:19 a.m. No year, no names, just a date and time. I found another one, May 2nd, 4:51 a.m., and another, unknown, scratched into the tape in shaky letters. That one made me pause. It didn't make sense. We stopped using cassettes in the dispatch center years ago. Everything's digital now, logged, archived, backed up. But these weren't in any system I knew about. I should have left it there. Should have closed the box and gone back to my desk. Instead, I carried it to the break room. The only cassette player I could think of was in the old training kit, buried in one of the cabinets. I had to dig through a pile of dusty binders and frayed cables to find it. The thing was yellowed with age, a plastic slider missing from one of the buttons. I plugged it into the wall, slid in the tape marked unknown, and pressed play. At first, just static. Then, faintly, a voice. Hello? Is anyone there? It was a man's voice. Shaky. Out of breath. I think someone's in my house. I can hear them walking. My stomach tightened. I've taken dozens of calls like this. It's the kind where you have to stay calm, keep the person talking, get as much detail as you can until help arrives. But this was different. I wasn't guiding the call. I was just listening to it. There was no dispatcher's voice. No responses. Just the caller. They keep stopping. Every time I moved to a different room, they stopped too. I felt my hand hover over the stop button, but I didn't press it. They're not trying to break in. They're already inside. The sound of his breathing grew sharper, faster. I could hear floorboards creaking faintly in the background. Then silence. For nearly 30 seconds, nothing but the faint hum of the tape. Then a whisper, too low to make out the words. The man spoke again, even quieter. It's not a person. There was a scraping sound, like something heavy being dragged. The man started crying, soft, shaky sobs. Then nothing. No click, no end of call tone. The recording just stopped mid-breath, as if the tape had been cut. I realized I'd been holding my breath. My hands felt cold. I ejected the tape, set it aside, and stared at the box. The rational part of me said, These were probably old, unprocessed calls, maybe from before everything was digitized. Could have been training recordings. Could have been prank calls. But the problem with that explanation was none of these were logged. I checked. Every call that comes in, even wrong numbers, has to be recorded and documented. I searched the date on that first tape. Nothing. No record of a call at that time. It was like it never happened. I should have told someone right then. But it was late, I was alone, and I felt embarrassed. Like I'd stumbled into something I wasn't supposed to know about. Still, I couldn't stop myself. I picked another tape at random, 7/09, 12:03 a.m., and slid it into the player. This one started with the sound of heavy rain. A woman's voice, almost drowned out by static. They keep knocking. Her voice was trembling, but steady enough to repeat it over and over. They keep knocking. They won't stop. I could faintly hear it in the background. 3 slow knocks. A pause. Then 3 more. How long have they been doing that? She asked suddenly, but not like she was talking to the dispatcher. More like she was talking to herself. They don't want to come in. They want me to open the door. The knocking got louder. Sharper. I could feel my skin tightening, goosebumps prickling up my arms. I knew this wasn't live, but every instinct in me wanted to pick up the phone, send a unit, do something. Then, a sound I'll never forget, the knock changed. It wasn't wood on wood anymore. It was wet, like something soft and heavy was hitting the door. The woman's voice broke into a scream, high and sudden, and the tape cut off. I sat there in the break room, staring at the player, my coffee cold and untouched. I don't know how long I stayed like that, just listening to the quiet. Eventually, I put the tapes back in the box, shoved it under the counter, and told myself I'd forget about it. But the thing about hearing something like that is you can't unhear it. Even when I left the room, I could still hear that wet knocking in my head. And I started wondering, how many calls never make it into the system? How many voices are trapped on tapes like these, tucked away in a box no one talks about? And why were they hidden in the first place? That night, I didn't make any more coffee. I sat at my desk, staring at the silent phone, and tried not to think about the voices waiting in that box. But I knew I'd go back. I couldn't help it. Because if there's one thing worse than hearing something you can't explain, it's not knowing how many more there are. I didn't open the rest of the box until 2 nights later. It was a Tuesday, quiet shift. The kind where the air in the dispatch room feels still and heavy, like the whole town's asleep at the same time. I told myself I was just killing boredom when I slid the box back onto my desk, brushing the thin layer of dust from its lid. But in truth, I'd been thinking about it since the night I found it. There was something about those cassettes, the way they'd been shoved into that back corner of the storage closet with no labels. No records, no dates, just a scrawled number on the spine of each one. I had played the first one that night, the one where the woman's voice cracked and broke, asking for help, but never giving an address. Then that sound at the end, like something dragging over the floor near her. I hadn't told anyone, not even Jason, who took the desk next to mine. That night, he was out for coffee. I was alone in the room. I picked the next tape. The number on the spine read 14. That was all. No date, no case file number, nothing. I slid it into the old cassette player we kept in the back. We only used it for training exercises now. The hiss of static came first. Then a man's voice. 911. He sounded out of breath. Yeah, I need someone now. I'm on Ridley Street, corner of Elm. It's bad. The caller's voice had a shaking urgency. I could hear the wind in the background. A car engine running. What's happened, sir? God, I don't know what it is. She just walked into the street. Out of nowhere. I hit the brakes, but he went quiet. Then his voice dropped to a whisper. She's not moving, but she's looking at me. The tape hissed again. Then a scraping sound. She's smiling, he said, almost too soft to hear. Then silence. The line didn't hang up. There was no click, just a faint sound of wind, and then the tape ended. I sat back, heart thumping, staring at the player. Ridley Street, corner of Elm. I knew that intersection. I drove through it almost every day. But I didn't remember any accident there. No pedestrian hit. No police report. I'd have heard about it. I pulled up the archives. We keep them in a database. Every call, every logged incident. I typed in the intersection. Nothing. I searched the date range I guessed from the tape's condition. Maybe 10 years back. Still nothing. That's when my stomach sank. Because 2 nights later, it happened. Same spot. Same time of night. A driver called in. Not on a dusty old tape, but on our live line. Breathless. Shaking. He'd hit a woman who stepped into the street out of nowhere. Said she wasn't moving. Said she was smiling at him. I froze with the headset still on my ear. It wasn't just that the details matched. It was the voice. I swear to God, it was the same man. The same tone. The same breathless panic. But this time it was now. The woman didn't survive. The driver was taken in for questioning, then released. I didn't say a word to anyone about the tape. I should have left it alone. But curiosity isn't always something you can turn off. It's more like an itch you can't stop scratching, even when you know it's going to draw blood. 3 nights later, I put in another tape. Number 22. The call began with a child's voice. Hello. I leaned forward, listening. Hi. The dispatcher on the tape said. This is 911. Do you have an emergency? There was a pause. Then the kid said, he's knocking on my window. The dispatcher's tone softened. Who is? I don't know. Are your parents home? Another pause. They're asleep, but he's smiling. I think he wants to come in. The dispatcher's voice wavered. Where are you, honey? The kid gave an address. I recognized it instantly. It was only 2 blocks from my apartment. Before the dispatcher could respond, the knocking came through the line. Slow, heavy, deliberate. The kid whispered, he has no eyes. Then the tape clicked off. I checked the database. There was nothing. No call from that address. No incident report. Nothing. But 4 days later, the same address came across my screen in real time. The neighbors had called in. Said the parents were found dead in their bedroom. Said the boy was missing. They never found him. By that point, my hand shook when I touched the box. I didn't know what I was dealing with. I tried to tell myself the tapes were old training scenarios, stage calls. But that didn't explain how they matched real events, events that hadn't happened yet when I listened to them. I started keeping track. Tape 07, a man trapped in an elevator, whispering that someone was on top of it, crawling. 3 days later, downtown, an elevator malfunction killed 2 people. Tape 19, a woman begging for help, saying she couldn't get out of her bathtub because the water's wrong. The next week, a woman was found drowned in her own apartment. It kept happening, every single time. And every time, the voice on the tape sounded exactly like the real one when the call came through days later. I stopped sleeping. The night that finally broke me, I was alone again. Jason had left early. The box sat under my desk like a living thing. I pulled out one more tape. Number 03. It began with silence. Then, the sound of breathing. The dispatcher's voice was calm. 911. What's your emergency? The breathing continued. Slow. Steady. Then, in the faintest whisper, you shouldn't be listening to this yet. I felt my whole body go cold. The dispatcher asked the usual questions. Name. Location. But the voice on the line didn't answer those. Instead, it said, you're going to hear me again. Soon. And when you do, it'll be for you. My chest tightened. The breathing grew louder. Closer. And then, nothing. The tape ended. I didn't check the database that time. I didn't want to know if there was a match. But now, every time the phone rings, I hear that voice in my head. And I'm just waiting for the night it comes true. The box is still under my desk. I haven't told anyone. But I've noticed something. At first, the tapes were random. Different voices. Different towns. Now some of them sound like people I know. Last night, I swear I heard Jason's voice on one. He hasn't had his real call yet, which means it's coming. And if the pattern holds, mine will come too. That's the worst part. The voice on tape 03 didn't just sound like a stranger. It sounded like me that I didn't plan on touching the box again. After what I heard on the last cassette, I should have locked the whole thing in a drawer and gone back to pretending it didn't exist. But that's the thing about curiosity. It's a slow, living thing. It doesn't just go away. It waits in the corner of your head, scratching, whispering. And tonight it won. It was a little after 2 a.m. The dispatch room was quiet. Too quiet. No radio chatter. No ringing phones. just the hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional shuffle of paper from my partner across the room. I couldn't even remember the last time we'd had a call tonight. I told myself I'd just glance in the box. Maybe read the labels. Maybe reorganize it. Anything except play another tape. When I lifted the lid, the smell of dust hit me first. Old cardboard and that faint, metallic scent magnetic tape always seems to have, even after years. Most of the tapes had little handwritten labels. November 3rd, 1987, disturbance. February 12th, 1991, missing child. But sitting near the bottom, half buried under the others, was one that stopped me. It wasn't dusty. It wasn't faded. And it had a label written in crisp black marker, the ink so dark it looked like it had been written an hour ago. The date on it was tonight. Not last year. Not last week. Not some year from the 90s. It had today's date. I felt my chest tighten. It had to be a joke. Someone in the department screwing with me. I turned the tape over in my hand. The reel inside was full, not rewound. Like it was waiting. I don't remember making the decision to play it. One moment, I was staring at it. The next, the old tape deck's lid was snapping shut, and my finger was pressing play. The tape hissed for a moment. Then, a man's voice came through. My voice. Dispatch, this is... There was a pause. Actually, you already know who this is. The sound of my own voice, but heavier. Slower. Like I'd been up for days. I glanced at my partner across the room. He didn't look up. Didn't react at all. On the tape, my recorded self kept talking. It's 2:14 a.m. You've got the box open in front of you. You're holding the tape you shouldn't have played. But you couldn't help yourself, could you? The words landed like ice in my stomach. I looked at the clock. 2:14 a.m. I stopped breathing. On the tape, I could hear myself take a slow, shaking breath. I know what you're thinking. This is a prank. Someone's messing with you. But you've checked the date. You've checked the handwriting. It's not a prank. Not the kind you can explain. My fingers were sweating against the arm of my chair. The voice on the tape was calm, almost resigned. You're trying not to move too much right now. Trying not to look at the corners of the room. But you feel it, don't you? The way the air's different. The way it's heavier in here than it was a few minutes ago. The hairs on my arm stood up. Because it was heavier. The air felt still, like the whole building had stopped breathing. You don't remember pressing play, the voice said. That's because you didn't decide to. You've been here before. You've heard this before. And every time, you tell yourself you'll stop before the end. But you never do. I froze. Every time? The voice on the tape gave a faint, humorless laugh. You think you're hearing this for the first time. But you're not. This is the last time. You've been trying to change it, over and over. But it always ends the same way. My chest felt tight, like the air wasn't reaching my lungs right. You're looking at your partner right now, wondering why he's not reacting. Don't bother. He can't hear this. He's never heard any of it. You could scream right now, and he wouldn't even turn his head. I stared at my partner. He kept typing something into his terminal, completely unfazed. The voice went quiet for a long moment, just the faint hiss of the tape. Then, in about 30 seconds, the phone will ring. It'll be line 3. You'll think it's just a regular call. It won't be. And when you answer, she'll know you've been listening. I shot a glance at the phone system. All the lines were dark. No ringing. I wanted to stop the tape. I wanted to eject it, throw it across the room. But my hands didn't move. It was like they weren't mine. You'll want to hang up when you hear her voice, the recording continued. You won't. You never do. And when you realize who she is, it'll already be too late. I swallowed hard. The clock ticked over to 2:15, and the phone rang. Line 3. The sound was so sharp, so sudden, it made me flinch. I looked at my partner. Nothing. He didn't even glance up. The ringing kept going. The tape hissed. My recorded voice whispered, "Go ahead. Pick it up." My hand moved before I could think. I lifted the receiver. For a moment, there was nothing. Just faint static. Then a voice. "Hello." Soft. Female. And so familiar that my whole body locked up. It was my mother's voice. Not the way she sounds now. Not the tired, older voice I know from holiday calls. This was her voice from when I was a kid. Young. Warm. "Sweetheart," she said. "You're still at work?" My throat went dry. She's alive. She's fine. She's probably asleep in her house across town. But this wasn't her. Not really. My voice cracked. Who is this? On the other end, the tone shifted. It got colder. You know who this is. The static deepened, and her voice broke like two people speaking at once. One her, one something else entirely. The tape was still rolling in the background. I could hear my own voice overlapping with the call, narrating in real time. She's smiling now, the recorded me said. You can't see it, but you know she is. She's in the room. Not the one you're in. The other one. I didn't know what that meant. But the woman's voice on the line whispered, turn around. Every nerve in my body screamed, not to. The recorded me said, don't. I stayed frozen. She laughed, a sound like my mother, but stretched thin, wrong at the edges. Fine, she said. I'll come to you. The line went dead, and the tape stopped. No click, no rewind. Just silence. I sat there, holding the receiver, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. When I finally set it down, I noticed something. The box wasn't under my desk anymore. It was sitting on the empty chair beside me. The lid was open. Inside, just one tape. No label. No dust. The reel inside was turning slowly, like it was recording. And the faint hiss from the machine was no longer coming from the speakers. It was coming from behind me, that I've worked dispatch for 4 years now. Long enough to know the different kinds of silence that can hang on a line. There's the quick silence, the kind that means someone scrambling for words, or moving somewhere they shouldn't be. There's the shaking silence, broken up by breath, trembling so hard you can hear their teeth knock together. And then there's the one that makes you hold your own breath, the silence that feels like it's not empty at all. I'd heard them all, until that night. It started like any other slow shift. The hum of the fluorescent lights above. The soft hiss of the air conditioner. That faint, constant static in the headset that, after a while, you stop hearing unless you're really listening for it. I'd been doodling on a sticky note, my coffee going cold, when the line lit up. Reflex kicked in. 911. What's your emergency? The first thing I heard was breathing. Not panicked. Not ragged. Just breathing. Hello. I tried again. Can you tell me what's going on? The breathing didn't stop. But then, I heard something strange, not in the background in the timing. I had just said, what's going on? And half a second later, the line said it back. Word for word. Same tone. Same pace. I froze. Sir, are you in danger? I asked, trying to push through the unease crawling up my neck. Sir, are you in danger? The voice repeated. It wasn't just copying me. It was me. Not kind of me. Not close enough. It was my exact voice. I leaned back in my chair, pressing my headset tighter to my ear, thinking maybe there was a glitch, some kind of line echo. But it wasn't like a normal echo. There was no distortion, no delay that made sense. It was too perfect, like I was listening to a recording that was live. Who is this? I asked. Who is this? It asked back. My chest felt tight. I glanced at the call display. No location data. Just unknown. I'd dealt with prank calls before. Teenagers with nothing better to do, drunks looking for attention. But this didn't feel like that. This felt deliberate, like someone was sitting somewhere, headset on, listening to me and smiling. I decided to try something. I stayed silent. The line stayed silent too. For 5 whole seconds, nothing moved. Just my breathing and its breathing. In sync. Then I whispered, so low I barely heard myself. Can you hear me? The voice came back, matching my whisper exactly. Can you hear me? My hand hovered over the flag button that alerts the supervisor to listen in, but I didn't press it. I don't know why. Maybe because I was afraid if someone else heard it too, it would make it real. I took another breath, steadying my voice. Why are you calling? Why are you calling? The tone was flat, not mocking, not emotional, just identical. I decided to break the pattern. This is Officer Julia Marks. You're interfering with an emergency line. For the first time, there was a pause. And then the voice, my voice said, this is Officer Julia Marks. You're the one interfering. I swear my stomach dropped. The hairs on my arms stood straight up. I've been keeping my eyes locked on the desk, but now I looked around the room. It was just me and Brett at the other desk, too focused on his own call to notice me. I felt this irrational urge to check the windows, even though I knew it didn't make sense. I turned back to the line. What do you want? What do you want? I gritted my teeth. Stop copying me. Stop copying me. I slammed my hand down on the desk. Enough. And that's when it happened. The voice didn't repeat me. It spoke first. Julia, it said. I went cold all over. I hadn't told it my first name. Not yet. I pulled the mic slightly away from my mouth. How do you know my name? How do you know my name? It shot back. Except this time, there was something different in the tone. Not perfectly flat anymore. It almost sounded amused. I flagged the call for trace, my hand shaking as I typed the request into the system. No match. No source. Where are you? I asked. Where are you? And then, before I could speak again, it said, right here. I ripped the headset slightly away from my ear like that could somehow make the words less real. The worst part was that right here didn't sound like a threat. It sounded truthful. My eyes darted to the monitors, the empty doorway, the dark glass behind Brett's desk. I forced my voice to stay steady. If you're in trouble, I can help you. If you're in trouble, I can help you, it replied. And then, Julia, you're not real. My pulse spiked so hard, I felt lightheaded. That wasn't a copy. That was something else entirely. The call abruptly cut. No click. No fade. Just gone. I sat there for a moment, breathing like I'd just run a mile. The empty tone hummed in my headset until I forced myself to hang up. Brett glanced over. You good? I nodded too quickly. Yeah, just a weird call. I didn't tell him. Didn't tell anyone. Because how do you explain that you just had a conversation with yourself? For the rest of the shift, I kept expecting the line to light up again. It didn't. But when I went to clock out, I noticed something that made my skin prickle. The call log for that number wasn't just blank. It was missing, like it had never happened at all. I told myself I'd forget about it. Just another strange night in dispatch. But the thing is, the next night, at the exact same time, the line lit up again. And I already knew what voice I was going to hear. When you work dispatch, your brain learns to expect the lag. Even in the middle of chaos, you adapt to it. Voices take a fraction of a second to travel through the lines. It's normal, annoying, but normal. That's what I told myself after the first call. The one where the voice sounded like mine. I kept trying to convince myself it was some kind of glitch. A bad connection. Maybe a prank. But tonight, it was different. The first time I heard him, if I can even call it a him, there was a delay. I'd speak. Then I'd hear the same words come back to me in my voice. Like talking into a mirror. But now, the mirror talks first. It started halfway through my shift. I had just logged another noise complaint, sipping cold coffee that tasted like cardboard. The line lit up again. I put on my headset, pressing the button without thinking. 911, what's your emergency? The voice said. It cut me off. Not repeating. Not echoing. It was first. I froze. I hadn't even finished my sentence, and it had already said the rest for me. My own voice, but sharper. A little too quick. Almost excited. Who is this? I asked. Who is this? It replied. No delay. No static. Just instant. I didn't know what to do, so I tried the old trick. You know, the one you use on prank callers. Say something unexpected, something that forces them off script. Tell me where you are right now. Tell me where you are right now. It snapped back, like it was impatient. I swear I felt a tightness in my chest then, because it wasn't like before. It didn't sound like someone mocking me. It sounded like I had said it, just in the wrong order. Like I was following it. I muted my mic, took a deep breath, and said, This is Officer June Park with County Dispatch. Identify yourself. And before my finger even left the mute button, I heard, This is Officer June Park with County Dispatch. Identify yourself. That was when I realized I wasn't in control of the conversation. I ended the call. Just hit the button, dropped the line. The phone stayed dead silent. But the voice kept speaking in my head. I know how that sounds, but it wasn't in my head, not exactly. It was like the memory of a sound still ringing in your ears after it's gone. The next 2 calls of the night were normal. Or maybe I was just desperate for them to be. A man reporting a break-in. A woman saying her neighbor's house was flooding. All the usual voices. All the usual panic. But my pulse wouldn't slow down, because I kept glancing at the board, waiting for that line to light up again. And it did. I took the call with my hand shaking. Before I could even breathe in, the voice said, June, don't hang up. I didn't say a word. Not out loud, anyway. The voice laughed. A small, sharp laugh that I have never heard come out of my own mouth before. But somehow, it still felt like mine. "You're going to speak now," it said. "And you're going to say exactly what I tell you." I opened my mouth to argue. Stupid, I know. And the words just came out. "Where are you?" I asked. I didn't want to say that. I didn't decide to say that. "Good," it said, almost like it was encouraging me. "Now ask me again." And I did. I couldn't stop myself. "Where are you?" It smiled through the line. I swear I could hear the smile. "Closer than you think." I yanked off my headset. The sound cut off, but my own words still rang in my head, like they didn't belong to me anymore. I reported it to my supervisor, but she barely even looked up from her desk. Bad connection. Audio glitch. She's heard it all before. She didn't get it. This wasn't audio. This wasn't a bad wire or lag. This was control. I went back to my station because what else was I going to do? Walk out? Leave the shift uncovered? I kept telling myself I wouldn't answer if it called again. I let it ring. But when the line lit up, my hand moved before I even knew it. Like my body didn't need my permission. "Say hello," it ordered. "Hello," I said. "Ask me who I am." "Who are you?" "You know." I swallowed. The thing is, part of me did know. "You're me," I whispered. "You're me," it said at the same time. Perfectly. We spoke together then. Word for word. Breath for breath. But it wasn't an echo. It was like a single voice split in two, trying to decide which mouth belonged to it. "Do you want to know which one of us is real?" it asked. I didn't answer. I couldn't. "Good," it said. "Then I'll show you." And the line went dead. That should have been the end. But the calls after that didn't feel real anymore. A woman reporting a missing child. A man asking for an ambulance. Their voices came through, but I kept hearing mine underneath. Like a layer of sound buried inside the call. Faint. Familiar. Watching. Every time I blinked, I imagined what would happen if I called myself. Would I hear me? Or it? At 3:14 a.m., I caught my reflection in the darkened monitor. I don't remember leaning forward, but my face was close. Too close. The thing is, this sounds stupid, but for a second, my reflection's mouth moved before mine. I pushed back from the desk, so fast my chair almost tipped. And that's when the line lit up. I stared at it for maybe 30 seconds, my whole body tense. And then the phone picked up by itself. "Say my name," the voice said. I didn't speak. "Say my name," it repeated. And then, without meaning to, I whispered, "June." It chuckled. "No, mine." I didn't understand. "That is your name," I said. Silence. Then, softly, "Not anymore." It hasn't called back since. Not in the normal way, anyway. But sometimes when the lines are quiet, I hear breathing in my headset. Slow, patient, waiting. And I get the feeling that the next time it speaks, I won't be the one repeating that I thought I'd learned to live with the voice. That's the worst part of it. How quickly you adapt to something wrong. How your brain rearranges itself to make the impossible feel normal. The first night, when it only echoed me, I was terrified. The second night, when it spoke before me, I was shaken. By the third night, I had begun to wait for it, like a shadow that had attached itself to my shift. That night, the headset felt heavier than usual. The wires seemed to tug at me, and every time I shifted in my chair, I caught myself listening for it. Not the regular calls, not the voices of real people. The other one. It started at 1:12 a.m. My monitor was quiet. No calls in the queue. I was just sitting there, staring at the flat blue glow of the CAD screen, when the voice slid into my ear. Unit 9 will be needed on Willow Lane. Not hello, not hi, not even my name. A statement. Calm, low, icy. It wasn't waiting for me this time. It was telling me. I blinked at the empty call list. What? The line was dead silent. No open channel. No flashing alert. I should have taken the headset off right then. Logged it. Reported it. Instead, I found myself whispering why. Because that's what you do when something doesn't make sense. You talk to it like it can make sense for you. The voice didn't answer. The silence stretched. And then, just 2 minutes later, my board lit up. Incoming call. Line 3. I answered, still a little dazed. 911, what's your? There's a man outside my house. A woman's voice blurted, breathless. Willow Lane. He's been knocking for 5 minutes. He won't go away. I froze. I didn't even have to ask the address. I already knew. We dispatched Unit 9. Exactly like the voice said. The same thing happened 24 minutes later. Car accident. South Ridge and Vine. Tell Unit 4 to stage 2 blocks away. I checked the board. No calls. No incidents. Nothing. Then, 30 seconds later, my console beeped. Line 5. A teenage boy, voice shaking. I think I just saw a car spin out on South Ridge. Oh God, the driver's not moving. It wasn't even surprising anymore. It was like the calls were coming from the future. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. It was that the voice never got anything wrong. Not once. And it always spoke in that same flat tone, like someone reading a grocery list. Around 2:40 a.m., I decided to test it. When it came through again. 2 juveniles breaking into a shed on Oakwood. Send Unit 3. I didn't log it. I sat back, arms folded, and waited to see if the real call would even come. A part of me hoped it wouldn't. That would mean it was all just coincidence. 3 minutes later, the board lit up. An old man's voice. I think some kids are in my backyard. My shed door is open. I felt sick. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't even luck. The voice knew. I don't know how long I sat there after that, staring at the wall clock. Each tick seemed louder than the last. And with each one, I wondered if the voice was watching something I couldn't see. I caught myself glancing around the dispatch room, checking the shadows between the file cabinets, the glass reflection in the window. It's ridiculous. I knew the sound was only in my headset, but I still felt like if I turned fast enough, I might see it. At 3:06 a.m., it came again. But this time, my stomach dropped before it even finished speaking. Call coming in. For you. My voice cracked. What do you mean? You'll answer it. The line went quiet. My monitor stayed blank for almost a full minute. Then beep. Line 1. I picked up. Throat dry. 911. What's your? You're in danger. It was my own voice. Not just the same tone as before. Not an echo. It was me. Exactly me. And the strange thing was, my lips were moving. I heard the words in my own ears, felt the muscles in my mouth form them, but I wasn't speaking. I yanked the mic away from my mouth, heart pounding, but the voice on the line kept talking in perfect sync with my own phantom movements. You will do as I say. Do not tell anyone. Do not try to stop it. You will answer. Every call. I slammed the line closed, pulled off the headset. It still felt like it was clamped to my skull. The rest of the night was a blur. I don't remember every call I took, just the feeling that I was never answering them alone. Every time I said something, I imagined the other me, out there somewhere, saying it first, or saying it with me, or whispering it before the words even reached my mind. When the shift finally ended, I walked out into the early morning air feeling like I'd been breathing someone else's oxygen all night. The next night, I almost didn't go in. But that's the trap, isn't it? You tell yourself if you skip one shift, it means you're afraid. And if you're afraid, you've already lost. So I went. And it was quiet for the first 2 hours. Almost peaceful. I almost convinced myself it was over. Until 2:18 a.m. This time, the voice didn't just tell me where to send someone. It gave me a name. Call for Officer Hartley. He will not make it. The clock ticked twice. Beep. Line 2. A frantic male voice. There's shots fired. Downtown near 4th, and an officer. He's down. I routed the call before I even thought about it. Hands cold, skin prickling. When I checked the CAD log 30 minutes later, the incident note confirmed it. Officer Hartley. Pronounced dead at the scene. I sat there for a long time, headset on the desk, listening to the hum of the computers. The voice was never wrong, and now it was telling me more than just what was coming. It was telling me who. It didn't stop there. The rest of the shift was call after call, each one announced before it happened. The times between got shorter. At first, I'd have a minute or two to brace myself. By 4 a.m., it was seconds. And then, one call didn't come. Fire. Maple Street Apartments. 3 dead. I logged it. Waited. 10 seconds. 30. A minute. No beep. I thought maybe, finally, it had slipped up. Then I noticed a faint sound in my headset. Not static. Breathing. And then, my own voice, so close it felt like someone was leaning right over my shoulder. You're going to tell them now. You're going to warn them. And when you do, you'll make it happen. I dropped the headset. The thud echoed in the empty room, and I realized something I'd been avoiding all along. The voice wasn't predicting the calls. It was giving them to me that I didn't think it would come down to this. When all of this started, the voice was a nuisance. A weird glitch. Something I could explain away with a technical fault, or bad wiring, or maybe even my own tired brain misfiring after too many graveyard shifts. But now I can't explain it. Because it's not just repeating me anymore. It's not just predicting calls before they happen. It's talking to me, directly, and it knows things it shouldn't. Tonight, the air in the dispatch center feels heavier than usual. There's no reason for it, just a thickness in the room, like the oxygen's been used up before I even got here. My headset feels colder against my skin than it should. I settle into the chair, log into the system, and try not to look at line 4. That's where it always comes from. I tell myself to focus, to be normal, take the calls, keep the tone calm and steady. And for the first 30 minutes, that's exactly what I do. Car accident on the highway, minor injuries. A woman locked out of her apartment while her stove was still on. The kind of standard stuff you can half handle while drinking stale coffee. It's easy to pretend that the other thing isn't going to happen. Until it does. The line clicks open without ringing. No name, no location, no number. And then, only one can stay. The voice is exactly like mine. Same pitch, same rhythm, same tiny hesitation between words. But it's not me. I try to keep my own voice level. What do you mean? There's a pause. And then, you or me. It says it flat. No anger, no drama. Like it's reading a fact off a page. I don't answer. My finger hovers over the end call button, but the voice goes on before I can press it. One of us has to hang up forever. The line clicks dead. I just sit there, staring at the screen like maybe the text will change, like the computer will tell me that this is just some prank call, some bored teenager with a voice changer. But it doesn't. The little green light on my console glows steadily, innocent, like nothing's wrong. The next call comes in 5 minutes later. This time it's a real person. A man, panicked, saying his wife hasn't come home from work. He's halfway through giving me her description when I feel that cold drop in my stomach. Because I already know what he's going to say next. The voice told me earlier today, in the middle of lunch, while I was alone in the break room. I'd heard it, just a soft whisper through the static of the old radio they never fixed. She's in the parking lot behind the old church. Passenger door open. She's not breathing. And now the man is saying he's heading to that exact spot to look for her. I try to push the thought away. Stick to protocol. Ask the right questions. Keep my tone steady. But deep down, I already know how this call ends. And when the man screams on the other end of the line, I know the voice was right. Again, it keeps happening. Over and over. The voice gives me instructions and minutes later, the calls match perfectly. It's not warning me. It's not asking for help. It's directing me. Telling me who to send. Where to send them. What to say. I start writing the instructions down just to prove to myself I'm not imagining it. A yellow legal pad now sits under my keyboard. Page after page of words in my own handwriting, but not from my own mind. Sometimes the orders are small. Tell the officer to park across the street, not out front. Ask the caller what they smell. Other times, they're not so small. Send the ambulance 5 minutes late. Do not answer line 2. I want to tell someone. I want to turn to the night's supervisor, to anyone, and say, something's wrong. Something's really wrong. But the voice said something else, too. Last night, right before I left my shift. If you tell, you hang up first. It's almost 2 a.m. when it happens again. Line 4 opens without ringing. I brace myself. It's time. My mouth is dry. For what? Only one of us can stay. You or me. I don't understand. You do. The silence after that is thick. I can hear my own breathing in my headset, but I don't know if it's my breathing or it's. The voice finally continues, slow and measured. You sit in my seat. You take my calls. You are my voice. But you're not me. I've worked here for 3 years. I whisper, like that's proof of something. And I've worked here for much longer. I don't even know why I'm talking to it. I should just hang up, pull the headset off, walk out the door. But I don't. because some part of me needs to hear what it's going to say next. When this call ends, one of us won't be here anymore. My skin prickles. What happens if? Don't ask. I think about just not responding, letting the line go silent until it drops. But before I can decide, another call comes in. A real one. Line 1. An older woman, whispering like she's hiding from someone. She says there's a man in her backyard, staring up at her window. I start asking the usual questions, but then line 4 lights up at the same time. And I know that it's the voice. It's never happened like this before. Both lines are active, both waiting for me. And suddenly I understand what it meant. One of these calls I'm not supposed to take. If I pick the wrong one, maybe I hang up forever. Or maybe I'm the one who disappears. My hands are shaking. The woman on line 1 whispers, "Please, please." I can hear him moving closer. On line 4, the voice waits. No sound, no static, just presence. I don't know how, but I can feel it waiting, like a shadow just behind me. I don't remember making the choice. 1 second I'm frozen. The next my finger is pressing the button for line 4. The voice speaks instantly. "Good. What did I just do? You stayed." And then the other line drops. Just a faint click as the woman's call ends. I stare at the screen, the empty green light. I don't know if someone else will pick it up or if she's gone for good. My stomach twists. What happens to her? Not your concern anymore. I want to slam the headset down, to scream, to run, but I can't move. Because something deep in my chest tells me I didn't just let a caller die. I took their place. The rest of the night is a blur. Every call I take feels wrong. The voices sound softer, slower, like they're coming from a little farther away than they should. And when I speak, I hear it, the tiniest delay. Like my words are echoing from somewhere else. Not a full second. Not enough to notice unless you're listening for it. But it's there. Exactly how it used to be before the voice started speaking first. It's almost dawn when I log out for the last time. The sky outside is pale and colorless, the kind of morning that doesn't feel alive yet. I take my headset off and set it on the desk. It's heavier than I remember. As I walk out, I pass the big wall clock near the door. For just a second, I think the hands aren't moving. But then they twitch forward, just enough to make me doubt what I saw. I didn't sleep today. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about that moment. The choice. And how easy it was. I keep wondering if the woman on line 1 ever got help. Or if maybe she's still out there, waiting for someone to pick up, waiting for me. But I'm here. And the voice stayed too. It's almost night again. My shift starts in 20 minutes. And when I go back, I don't know if I'll be taking calls or giving orders. I guess I'll find out which one of us hung up. For good.